It sounds a lot like what that independent autopsy report revealed earlier today. Sheriff Micah, I'll send it back to you in the studio.
John Fenolio, thank you. Back to the live pictures from Sky 5 over Hollywood and a number of protesters in violation of the curfew that was implemented as of 6 p.m. again tonight. Larry Welkin, Sky 5, watching the LAPD manage or do their best to manage the situation. Larry?
It's really more of the second one, doing their best, because it's just an incredibly difficult position they're in. This is Melrose and Cahuenga right here. And we can tell you that the California Highway Patrol has just radioed to the LAPD saying, we've got a mobile field force and we are coming to help you and give you backup. And LAPD said, great, we'll let our ground units know. So they are on their way right now and holding out on Melrose to assist. They are trying to assess whether or not they could get into what they're calling arrest mode. And at this point, they're just trying to contain this crowd. Very difficult to estimate how many in this crowd. But for those people that are familiar with Hollywood, you know that when Cahuenga gets down here to Melrose, just south of that, you've got nothing but residential homes down here. So you can see there's a tremendous amount of residential homes. And there are no businesses there. So that is where we find ourselves right now with the majority of this group. It is right at Melrose and Cahuenga. Now, there are a couple of businesses here east and west along Melrose. There's a Pavilions Market that has been completely boarded up. But right now, they are trying to determine whether or not they are going to contain these people to this area and try and take anybody into custody. At this point, though, we just don't know. I can also tell you that area at the Gower Gulch, while it looks like a police station, there are so many police cars in that parking lot, there's also a very large crowd, at least 200 or 300 people that are standing on the corners of Sunset and Gower. Some of them are on the west side, some are on the east side. And so there's a California Highway Patrol helicopter up there trying to guide in some of the LAPD units and help in the neighborhood around that Gower Gulch. So a dynamic situation here. They've got several things going on, but there you can see, for now, it's a large group of people that have gathered. Earlier we saw them on Cahuenga. They took knees in front of the skirmish line. They've now since gotten up and have come down here to Melrose and Cahuenga. We are waiting to see what will happen next, and we will continue to monitor the situation and bring you updates. I can tell you that the CHP has now joined the LAPD at their command post, waiting for deployment orders. So a very tough situation here in Hollywood that we will be monitoring throughout the evening. Micah, back to you.
Larry, is it your sense that the vast majority of people that we've seen have now congregated here, or is there still a splinter in effect?
There's still a little bit of a splinter, but right now the majority of the people have been sort of corralled, if you will, into this particular spot. But like I said, there's a couple 300 people that are still up on Sunset and Gower, and you know, we're talking about an hour and 20 minutes after the curfew, or an hour and a half after the curfew's been in effect. So while I look around Hollywood, I can see that the traffic has died down as far as people that were just driving around earlier, but still a lot of people. But as far as a small group that we've seen that over the past couple of days, they've demonstrated that they've gone into businesses and caused trouble for some of the businesses. And unfortunately, this is Melrose, and Melrose is still fresh, just a couple miles down the road, where almost every building on Melrose between La Brea and La Cienega was damaged in some fashion. But now this group has started to make their way west on Melrose, headed back toward where they had just cleaned up the earlier mess. So they're just a couple miles away from that location. And again, no word. We're monitoring the frequencies. There is a tremendous presence. But we are going to go back to Sunset and Gower. I'll tell you this, there's another group that's sitting in the middle of the intersection on Gregory. They are waiting to be taken into custody. That's it from Sky 9 for now, or Sky 5, I apologize. Sky 5 from now. Micah, back to you in Hollywood.
All right, Larry Welk aboard Sky 5. As you see the scope of the issue LAPD is dealing with, again, a curfew in effect, and you have a number of groups numbering in the hundreds scattered about across Hollywood. And at this point, the LAPD strategy is what you see in front of you. That will likely change at some point, as again, this is now past curfew, so everyone who's out on the street is in violation of that curfew, and law enforcement will be taking action at some point as we move forward into the evening. But again, a dynamic situation in Hollywood, and a symbol of great presence and strength at City Hall as well tonight, as we see not only a number of LAPD officers, but a number of National Guard troops as well, staging in the area. We've heard from LA Mayor Garcetti talking about a number north of 500, perhaps as many as 700 National Guard troops that are positioned in and around the city of Los Angeles to manage the situation as we move into the evening hours. We have seen a good deal of peaceful protesting throughout the day. There have been pockets of violence. We have seen looting at least 3 businesses in Van Nuys along Victory Boulevard. We watched it live here in the 5 o'clock hour, or the 4 o'clock hour, I believe, a drugstore in Van Nuys on Victory Boulevard, where you saw hundreds of people just storm the storefront and break through the barrier that they had set up. But at this point, we are watching things unfold in downtown Los Angeles. As we understand, there you see the National Guard Humvees in the distance, and we understand preparations for another protest are underway in downtown Los Angeles. But as the LAPD stages and the National Guard stages, we'll continue to watch the picture from downtown Los Angeles and go to Van Nuys as well, where Jennifer McGraw is standing by live. She's been walking alongside many of the protesters for some time now. Jen?
Micah, it's so hard to keep up because everybody's dispersing, and then we're hearing one thing after another. We heard the Walgreens just up the street from where we were a little while ago, and police are making arrests here. We heard that they were breaking into this Walgreens and that a few cars pulled up, and one after another came running in, and of course came running out with bottles of booze. The fire department is also out here. We heard some type of officer-involved shooting that has not been confirmed at this point. We're trying to figure out if that indeed happened, but I can see about, I don't know, 10 or so. They look like almost children, kids out there, probably young adults being arrested. And the vans just pulled up. So that's sort of the protocol. They broke curfew. They may have looted this Walgreens. They'll be zip tied, and then their information, and then they'll be put in those vans. But what is really concerning out here is this is happening so fast, and there's so many stores around the area. You just hear one siren after another.
From the Alex Jones show. Alex Jones sent out his his news people out to like record what was going on in wherever they live in Texas, Austin, Texas, and Antifa was burning up a homeless encampment. They were taking their fucking beds and throwing them in a fire. It was really fucked up, man. It was really sad. And the homeless guys were like scared. They're like, "What the hell? Like, I live here." And just to show that like people who are rioting, they're not good people. They don't have good intentions, and they want to destroy. They don't care who you are. They want to destroy everybody. So if you guys support rioting, if you think it's just, it's not. You're on the wrong side of the argument. And you're going to see that in the coming weeks as things play out with Trump declaring war against Antifa. It's all very strategic and key. So you'll see. You guys will see it about, in the coming weeks. It's going to play out. Anyway, I'll tune back later.
Cool.
We still have Jen. I'd like to ask her a question. Obviously, the curfew has come and gone. At the top of the 6 o'clock hour, did you notice anything different, or did people just continue on down the street and ignore the curfew?
That guy's interesting. Yeah, that's my lawyer. I pay him big bucks.
You saw a huge gathering. People said they weren't going to leave, and then they left. They ran away. They ran away from police. Nobody wants to be arrested, but there were 2 people who were adamant about the cause and being out here, and they were arrested. But for the most part, we're seeing people run away from police. Nobody wants to be arrested out here because these aren't protesters for the most part. These are people who are violent, or people who want to steal, or people who are just trying to cause chaos that are breaking curfew. So for the most part, that's what we're seeing out
here. Yeah, they're probably here.
All right, Jennifer McGraw in
really
Van Nuys tonight. We'll continue to monitor the situation there and take you back now to Sky 5 over Hollywood as hundreds of protesters in violation of curfew now and the LAPD dealing with the situation and planning, I would assume, to change tactics at some point. This will not go on through the night, Larry.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We're watching and listening to the LAPD try and get a hold of a group of people that are under arrest. They just have not been taken into custody. So you've got the LAPD motorcycle units, you've got the ground units, and this is all very close to that area of Gower and Sunset that we were looking at earlier. In fact, we'll move over here to the left, and you can see there's a large group of people that are sitting in this intersection right now on Sunset. Now, I can also tell you that when we were looking down at Melrose, it appeared that a large number of the people that were at Melrose and Cahuenga have dispersed, and but they have not just dispersed, they've moved to the west. They just continued west. They're being followed by the LAPD, and now the LAPD is concentrating on that group. They're following them, and at the same time, they're getting ready to take some of these people into custody. In fact, if we tilt up just a little bit, you'll... Oh, hang on one second. And TV5 will be climbing up.
Yeah, there you see the buses. And the plan here, we understand, is for law enforcement to box them into the intersection and one by one take them into custody. And you see those transport vehicles there, the buses. They appear to be LA County Sheriff's Department buses that they will use to transport a large number of people off to jail as they are now in violation of the curfew. Larry Welke in Sky 5. Larry, I think you were about to address the vehicles there as you see them. The buses, you talked about it earlier, and you saw them moving through the area, and now here they are just about a block away from this group.
That's right, there's also another large number of vehicles. In fact, if we go west on Sunset here, it'll be tough to see, but behind one of the tall buildings there on the left, you'll see more reinforcements just pouring into the area right now. Take a look at that. So that's the CHP that I was talking about earlier, the backup from the CHP, and you can see they are really not messing around. The CHP got here very quickly. There's some motor officers behind them, and then they're followed by the LA Fire Department, just in case somebody gets hurt here. And now, if we come back down to this group, we'll come back down to Sunset and Gower, and you'll see that if you tilt down just one more block, you'll see another large contingent of officers on motorcycles. Keep tilting up, and you'll see what I was talking about. There's some officers that are walking between the cars right there, and they are going to reinforce this group right here. And now I can tell you that a lot of these people have gotten up and have started running northbound. Northbound, it looks like that might be Vine and El Centro, rather. El Centro, they're running northbound on El Centro. So some of them trying to get away. LAPD, they're really not doing much to chase them. But there is another group of people a block north. Like I said earlier, almost anywhere you look, you're going to see a group of 50 to 60, maybe 100, 200 people all over Hollywood right now, and that was as a result of a very much larger, very peaceful protest where people were stopping at red lights. And at this point, now the people that were about to get taken into custody, the majority of them have taken off and are now running along Sunset Boulevard.
All right, Larry Welke in Sky 5, and we're going to look back again at a live picture from Van Nuys as arrests are underway. LAPD officers taking people into custody. And to reiterate the message from Chief Michael Moore today, the police department looks to essentially work in concert with peaceful protesters and allow them to demonstrate peacefully and to understand as law enforcement the group's motivation and their plan. And the police will work with them and then dealing with only those who are causing problems, those who are looting, those who are vandalizing and not allowing them to break the law. Certainly law enforcement will move in quickly on them. But again, all these people you see here were 48 minutes past the curfew. They're in violation of the law. Jennifer McGraw is on the ground here in Van Nuys with a closer look. Jen.
Yeah, Micah, they're not playing out here. There is a 6 o'clock curfew, and they mean business. They were at the Walgreens. They looked across the street. They saw people walking. They crossed the street immediately, stopped traffic, and then they zip-tied and arrested those people. And these are people who, honestly, Micah, may just be walking home tonight. Unfortunately, they just got caught up in the curfew, and all these people out here are causing chaos and destruction. There might just be honest citizens trying to get home, but unfortunately that's just not the case. It is past curfew. These people will be zip-tied and taken to jail. And as we're crossing the street here, that's where they're basically corralling everybody here at the Walgreens initially. But they're going up and down the street, and it does look like there are quite a few police officers over here, but this is just one faction of what's happening in Van Nuys. There are so many different sections of Van Nuys right now being policed, people being arrested. I wish people were heeding the warning and listening to that 6 o'clock curfew, because they mean business. And you know what? After looking at the last couple of days, they have to do this. They say they have to enforce this to get people to stop, to get people to behave, to stop looting, to stop the chaos and the destruction in the streets. And as we're out here in Van Nuys, we've seen so many businesses now boarding up, thinking, how did it get to Van Nuys? I saw just a school program down the street boarding up, and people are just really in fear for their business. People are in fear for their lives, and it's all because of the destruction that we've seen across Hollywood, Fairfax, Orange County, you name it. Micah, it's a really serious situation out here.
Yeah, you mentioned that some of these people may have been caught up trying to get home. Is that the sense you're getting, or did you hear them trying to plead their case to officers?
I did. I heard one man, and he just said, I'm trying to go home, and it was, sorry. And unfortunately, I don't know if he's going to be able to talk his way out of this, but he had his mask on, he was doing the right thing. But that's one person who may be doing the right thing, and then so many who aren't. You know, just like these two people here, you just don't know, just walking by. And if you're in the wrong place at the right time, you're going to be arrested.
Yeah, curfew is curfew for a reason, and stay at home. And this is something we're seeing not only in Van Nuys, where Jen McGraw is standing by, but also in Hollywood in much larger numbers. Again, this crowd in Hollywood that is moving and splintering off, there's a large group of police officers that has staged along with the CHP, and we saw a couple of, I believe, LA County Sheriff's Department buses that will be used to transport these people once they are arrested. Again, the curfew 51 minutes ago was established across the county of Los Angeles. And here in Hollywood, police are dealing with an issue as they see people still milling about and moving in every direction possible. Larry Welk's been watching this for us in Sky 5. And Larry, we saw a large group there at the one intersection of CHP officers and also LAPD. But then, you know, you pan the camera left or right and you see another group of people milling about.
Yeah, it's just really tough to tell who is who down here. Now they're talking about the people that have been trapped in those cars that were, you know, perhaps just trying to drive around Hollywood. But hey, let's go one block to the west and quickly show there's a large group of people that are running down the road here. Again, LAPD is doing the best they can to try and corral some of these people. What they're really trying to do here is get people into reasonably sized groups so that they can disperse, but at this point now take them into custody before a large group can do the kind of damage that we've seen over the past couple of days. So that's, and they're accomplishing that goal. We haven't seen, but for the you know, stray bottle of water or rocks being thrown, we really haven't seen that much in the way of damage. Earlier today, we were watching the Gower Gulch, and there was some attempted looting. We saw some people get away with a few things, but for the most part, they were able to protect the property. It looked like nobody got hurt. After all, that's the most important thing right now, the protection of people and property. And so at this point, right now, there's another group, the one that we were looking at earlier on Melrose. They're moving northbound on Highland. They're being tracked by the LAPD. LAPD, California Highway Patrol, the LA County Sheriff's Department, and of course the National Guard, if needed, can all be in Hollywood to try and corral a lot of these people. But now we're being told that if you are here in an automobile, you will be subject to arrest as well. Of course, if you're just trying to get home from work, they will not arrest you. But if you're out here and you're part of the protest, or if you're part of any of the demonstrations that have been going on, at this point, you are subject to being arrested by the LAPD. So we'll take you back down to the Gower Gulch area, and we'll show you just what kind of a presence we're looking at right now. It is massive. Take a look at what we're looking at right now. That is the LAPD, those two sheriff's buses on the right. We'll tilt up a little bit, and we'll show you a group of people between the Rite Aid and that construction site. These people, they're being very cooperative. They're sitting, they're standing around, they're kneeling. It looks like they might be taken into custody in short order. The other group that we just looked at earlier, they are scattering through Hollywood right now. They are running. Some of them are driving. Then there's a third group making their way northbound on Highland. We can't see them just yet, but they were walking North Highland from Melrose. Almost everywhere you look, LAPD or another law enforcement agency really trying to do what they can to take these people into custody before the sun sets, and hopefully not have a repeat of some of the trouble that we've seen over the past few nights. So that's what's going on here in Hollywood. A tough situation for law enforcement here, as there are still hundreds of people violating the curfew and running around the streets of Hollywood. Micah, back to you.
All right, Larry Welk in Sky 5, and again to downtown Los Angeles, where we have a live picture at 5th and Los Angeles. And the groups are beginning to mobilize and grow, as you see here live. We know the LAPD is in position downtown. We know the National Guard is also staging downtown at City Hall. And as we look live here, this is a sense of what it's like on the ground, a different picture than what you see from Sky 5. And groups of people here that are appearing to begin to mobilize here again well after curfew. This is in violation of the law. The curfew set across the county of Los Angeles for 6 p.m. and in other parts of Southern California as well, across San Bernardino County, in Rialto, Fontana, Highland, Loma Linda, Ontario, San Bernardino, Upland, all a 6 o'clock curfew. And in parts of Orange County as well. Anaheim, 6 p.m., Costa Mesa, 7 p.m., Huntington Beach, 8 p.m. curfew. But as we focus on the picture we're seeing here in downtown Los Angeles, another Sheriff's Department bus there in the background, and look at the contingent of LAPD officers here in downtown Los Angeles preparing to deal with any crowd that might gather. We are seeing a crowd just from the last 15 minutes or so that's beginning to grow in downtown Los Angeles. At this point, we don't know what their motivations are. Obviously, they're in violation of the curfew and shouldn't be out on the streets, whether they're peaceful or not. This is a violation of the law. And as we saw in Van Nuys and as we're seeing in Hollywood, these individuals will be taken into custody if they do not adhere to the dispersal order, and if they're even going to be given a dispersal order at this point, or just taken into custody for being on the street, which in and of itself is a violation of the law at this point. We'll see what LAPD does with this live shot in downtown Los Angeles. And again, back up over Hollywood, a picture that is similar but in much greater numbers. Hundreds of people still milling about. Law enforcement is spread out across the city of Hollywood here, moving through the area of Hollywood along with the CHP, and there's more trouble unfolding at this Walgreens. Larry, what's the locator here?
Well, this is Highland. We went to Highland and Melrose. We came up Highland. This is Santa Monica and Highland, and there's a Walgreens store there, and you can see people there trying to stop them. People that were part of this earlier trying to stop them. But look over to the left side of your picture. They just smashed these windows out, and we're getting a little bit of exhaust here. CHP helicopter came over here, and we're trying to guide some of the ground units over here before they got to this intersection. Unfortunately, they didn't make it in time. So you can see that. Look at that, a group of protest or people that were involved in the earlier demonstration there, trying to get people not to go into that Walgreens. So that's a little bit of good news. Unfortunately, we see some of the people that were causing some of that trouble. Hold on one second. We've got you in sight. Come on over. So I'm still talking to the other aircraft. There's 3 law enforcement helicopters up here with me right now. And unfortunately, the group is starting to splinter off. Down south of this group, if you were to continue south on Highland, there is probably 20 or so LAPD black and whites with their lights on, trying to push this crowd that is sort of straggling along up into this intersection. But they continue to move north, and like we saw there, just for a couple of seconds, that's all it takes for people to get in there, break some windows, use the spray paint, and stop traffic in these intersections. And that's what's going on right now. But it looks like they were able to stop people from going inside this market, or this Walgreens pharmacy, and there were no other businesses around to speak of. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at where people are moving now as they're making their way out of this intersection, and they continue to make their march northbound on Highland, approaching the Sunset Boulevard area. So again, each time they think that they can sort of contain some of these officers, something else happens, and they have to go after some of the bad apples, and that's what's going on right now.
You bet.
Go behind with
yeah, and as we see the crowd continuing to move through Hollywood, LAPD with an issue on its hands as we approach the 7 o'clock hour. Cher Calvin back with us on the air. Cher, we've been watching this group in Hollywood, obviously in violation of the law, in violation of the curfew that was in effect at the top of the 6 o'clock hour, and they appear to have no motivation to adhere to that law.
1 hour ago, this curfew went into effect. Micah, thank you for the introduction. I'm Cher Calvin alongside with Larry Welk, and we have live team coverage on this breaking news from downtown Los Angeles, here in Hollywood, where we are overhead in Sky 5, and also in Van Nuys, where we have Jennifer McGraw on the ground. We are continuing to follow these protests, and some of them have splintered off and have looted in the area of Gower and Sunset at a Rite Aid there. We also saw a Walgreens where they were shattering, they shattered some of the glass at a Walgreens there on Highland and Santa Monica. And now we see these protesters making their way north to Sunset Boulevard. And we have also seen several arrests. Those arrests that we saw were in Van Nuys. They are preparing to make arrests as well in downtown Los Angeles. We saw a large bus that was ready to take in protesters or whoever is violating these the countywide curfew. And this is now against the law to be outside at this time. You are asked to go home. You are asked to disperse. And if not, this is going to be considered a unlawful assembly, and you will be arrested. Some 700 people were arrested last night in the Santa Monica area and around Los Angeles County. Some 500 people were arrested on Friday night in downtown Los Angeles. Some 400 people were arrested in the Fairfax district and around Los Angeles County. And now we go to Larry Welk in Sky 5 as these protesters make their way north on Highland towards Santa Monica. We saw them stop there for a moment, Larry, and holding their hands up. Tell us what the scene is and just how large this contingent of the protest is at this hour.
This appears to be well over 100 people that are making their way northbound on Highland from Alexandria. And we can tell you that that the officers from the LAPD's mobile field force, they are behind this group, about a block behind the majority of this group. And unfortunately, like you said, when they got up to Santa Monica at that Walgreens, they started breaking windows. But we saw a remarkable thing. We saw several people that were here in this march, in this demonstration, stand in front of the entrance like, no way, you're not getting in here right now. And the crowd simply moved on. So those people are to be commended for not letting that Walgreens. Of course, it's not just a tagging of a building or a broken window. Unfortunately, what we've seen is after people get into some of these buildings, they, for whatever reason, attempt to ignite them with fire. So the LAPD is also being assisted by the LA City Fire Department. They've got ambulances, and it looks like a battalion chief that is attached to this group because they want to have a rapid response with a fire department as well. So right now, we don't see any businesses we don't see a lot of businesses being affected by this. Traffic certainly being affected in Hollywood. And everywhere I look in Hollywood right now, law enforcement is out. But again, they just are watching this group right now over by the Gower Gulch. They've got about 100 or so people that are peacefully sitting down, some of them kneeling. And our understanding is that in very short order, they will be taken into custody and arrested for unlawful assembly and or being out after the curfew, which obviously the curfew has been on now for a couple hours. And people are still out in force here in Hollywood. Cher?
All right. Thank you so much, Larry Welk in Sky 5. And we want to now go to the ground and Lauren Lister. Lauren has been reporting for us in Hollywood, and it looks like she is in front of the Rite Aid that was looted and vandalized. Lauren?
Cher, Micah, just a short time ago, live on Sky 5, we saw the looters rushing into this Rite Aid, rushing out. Take a look. Look at the broken glass, the broken door, the security door. Says store equipped with alarm. Alarm will sound. That did not stop the looters that we saw running into this store and making off with whatever we could. Take a look at this. Take a look at the officers. What we saw once those looters got into this Rite Aid was the police really descended upon this area and filled this parking lot and kind of chased them away. And there's still a heavy police presence in this parking lot because, of course, this is after curfew, 6 o'clock, that curfew put into place this evening. These looters in this area of Gower Gulch, well, it was moments just after that curfew coming into place, even slightly before. Right then is when we saw that happen. I want to show you some video. To give you a sense of what it looked like when that happened, just to set the scene. This was after we had seen peaceful protests in that area, in this area, in fact, that we had been covering, and just a short time later, hopefully you're seeing this video of the looters running into the Rite Aid, getting what they could, leaving into cars, getting into cars, and driving off. Now, that's something that we have seen on occasion, during these civil unrest, during moments of civil unrest in the different cities where we have seen this looting. Now, let's show you more, because Gower Gulch, you can tell, a lot of stores are boarded up, but the ones that were not, take a look. This is Kebab Daddy. This is just a completely damaged restaurant. Apparently closed at the time. Glass shattered, alarm is still going off. And then if we walk down further, you can see store after store is boarded up. But then right down here at the end, look, there's a sign, Black Lives Matter, hashtag I can't breathe. And then right here, Starbucks. Totally shattered glass. You can even see some sunglasses left on the floor. And then inside the store, hard to tell just what has been taken, but you can see a mess of glass left behind. So I have another video. I want to show you the peaceful protests that were in this area just a very short time before we saw all of this, because we had been with a group of protesters that were marching very peacefully from Sunset and Vine, where they demonstrated, and they organizers and people we spoke to there said they were there in support of Black Lives Matter. It was a peaceful march. It went down Sunset, got to Bronson, went down Bronson, then when it seemed to go a few different ways after that, we parted ways with that group, but then it was just a short time later that then the scene of thieves and vandalism in Gower Gulch, where we are now. Back out here live, you can see that there is quite an LAPD police presence in this area now. They came into this area when that Rite Aid was being vandalized and looted and got everybody out, shooed them away, and now there's this heavy police presence here. You can see all of these black and white vehicles parked out here.
There is certainly
none of the protests in this area, none of the looters in this area, that's all been cleared. And now you see this heavy police presence here on Sunset Boulevard. Now that this curfew is in full effect and we have begun to see some of the violence, some of the criminality before even dark. Share, Micah.
Okay, I'll take it, Lauren, and we want to go now to Sky 5 and Larry Welk. He is over the scene of what will be many arrests tonight. Let's go to the scene and the location where Larry is now. Larry?
We'll share, it's Leland and El Centro, almost right behind the Gower Gulch, just about a block away. And we're seeing people taken into custody. Just a few minutes ago, they were up against this. So you can see they've got the zip ties around their wrists, and they are being taken into custody. These were a couple of people that were running away from the Gower Gulch, and they were boxed in by the LAPD. And now we're hearing just about a block away on Vine, near this Gower Gulch, they are boxing in a group that is larger than this right now. And we're hearing that they're starting to talk about maybe making their way over to Highland and taking that large group that we saw at the Walgreens earlier into custody. But here you go. They are starting the process of arresting people because of the violation of the curfew, and some of the folks that were involved earlier in the Gower Gulch incident that were sort of boxed in. And so that's the latest over Hollywood. Again, it's going to be a long night here. We're going to remain overhead and bring you updates throughout the evening. I'm Larry Welk, Sky 5. Back to you.
Larry, thank you. And we want to go back to Lauren Lister, who is live in your screen right now, where we are seeing several arrests underway as well. Lauren.
We're live. Yeah, sure, Micah, you can see that they have a group of individuals lined up against this wall that looks like what a business put up to board up the area, and they are all being detained at this moment. They're getting the zip tie handcuffs. Now, what exactly they are being detained for, we don't know at this very moment, but this is the scene that is directly across the street from the Gower Gulch, where we showed you just moments ago the Rite Aid that has been looted and vandalized. So here you can see a Sheriff's Department bus, and these are LAPD officers with CHP as well. We know that they have been assisting in all of that. Maybe I can get somebody to tell me what's going on here, but you can see there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, at least a dozen people that are being detained here. It's after curfew. We certainly know that. Beyond that, we don't know much about the circumstances surrounding this or what happened. Maybe the officer, can you tell me why these people are being detained? Can you tell me why we're live on KTLA? Can you tell me why these people are being detained? Unlawful assembly. Okay, unlawful assembly. Sure. Where are they being taken now? Are they going to be booked? So these people are all arrest. How many? Do you have a sense? Okay. Were they protesting, or did you believe they were involved in anything else? You don't know. Okay. Thank you so much. So unlawful assembly, group of people being taken now away to be booked, and this is just right across the street from where we saw that looting at 6 o'clock, just right around that time, and also where just a short time before that we saw peaceful protests with people having a message, organizing around a message of Black Lives Matter for the demonstrators that we spoke to there. So that's a scene here, Sharon, Micah. For now, that's the very latest, the scene where a group of more than a dozen are being arrested. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Lauren, thank you. And this is just right across the street from that Rite Aid at the Gower Gulch. This on Sunset Boulevard and Gower, where you see several arrests, at least a dozen arrests underway right now, and being put into the County of Los Angeles Sheriff. This is a bus that will take them downtown. They have officially been arrested. They will be booked. And we had seen this throughout the weekend. 500 arrests that happened on Friday, some 400 yesterday, under 700 yesterday. And this is the scene now as we are more than an hour into a county-wide curfew in Los Angeles County. This is in effect until 6 o'clock in the morning. You are not allowed to be outside. You are asked to go home, and this is an unlawful assembly. It is a violation of the curfew. And we do have Jennifer McGraw. She is in Van Nuys. She is also following the protests there and now the arrests of several people. We want to go live to her right now. She is on, excuse me, on Sherman Way. And you were saying that there were some people that were actually just trying to go home, Jennifer, but got caught up in the midst of this and have also been arrested. Talk to me about that.
It's truly, I'll get to you in a moment. Let me talk to you about this first because your big alarm is going, so that's what you guys are hearing in the background. Come with me this way, Sean. Here in the store, someone broke into the store, and what's concerning especially about the Big Five is the fact that they actually have guns and rifles inside the store, so police quickly responded. They obviously broke into the glass, but it doesn't appear anybody got through. I did hear that there was a small opening, so there was potential for somebody to get through. They called the rifle operator out here, and they were barricading this front door just in case. But they say at this point nobody is inside the store. And of course, when you see such a heavy police presence, a ton of people want to watch Sean swing over that way. After this bus moves out of the way, you'll see officers who took care of the Big Five and then crossed the street and now are making rounds of arrests because that curfew is enforced and strict. And if you look over here just down the street, Sean, you see even more officers. So as people are dispersing from the original peaceful protest, others are out here who are not peaceful, who did not heed the warning, who did not go home and are now going down these city streets. And police say, well, guess what? We're going there too. So they're definitely taking care of business. They're making sure that people's lives are protected. They're making sure businesses are protected as best they can. And then after that, that's when they go after these curfew violators. A lot of action here in Van Nuys, all up and down Van Nuys from where we started on Delano, and now we're here at Sherman Way, and these police mean business, and the police helicopter is up above. We've seen people set fires out here. We've seen people run out of Walgreens with bottles of booze. They're just trying to get their hands and create mayhem. Again, these are not the protesters who are causing these issues. But if your kids are in Van Nuys, if you think your kid is out, call them, tell them, come home. The last thing you want to do is have them arrested. We're in the middle of COVID-19. Police mean business here. Oh, and then, sorry to answer your question. I did see one person that looked like he was just trying to get home, and unfortunately, he got caught up in the chaos. But for the most part, these are people who know better. These are people who are just spectators. These are people who shouldn't be out past curfew.
Jennifer McGraw live for us in Van Nuys, showing us what the scene looks like there as we are overhead now with Larry Welk in Sky 5. He is in Westwood, has moved from Hollywood, and now arrests underway in Westwood. Larry?
That's right. You know, we heard that there was a large police presence that was moving through Beverly Hills. And sure enough, the LA County Sheriff's Department, along with the Beverly Hills Police Department, have a large group of people here on Wilshire Boulevard, and they've contained them in the area of Wilshire Boulevard that leaves Westwood and goes over toward Santa Monica into Beverly Hills. And this is the LA Country Club area of Wilshire Boulevard, and they did a good job of getting these people sort of boxed into this area. And these people putting up no resistance. As a matter of fact, I think that they wanted to be arrested because they sat down, and each time somebody gets taken into custody, you see some applause from the people that are sitting in this middle of Wilshire Boulevard. Now, let's move over to the right here a little bit. You'll see that there are people that are being walked over after they have the handcuffs, the makeshift handcuffs with the zip ties, and they are simply standing there with officers getting ready to be loaded into what we think is a metro bus that is standing by and waiting to take some of these people away. But again, right here, it doesn't matter what part of Los Angeles you're in right now, whether you're in the San Fernando Valley, Hollywood, downtown, Westwood, there are arrests being made in all areas of the city for demonstrators that have not heeded the warning of officials and have ignored the curfew warnings. They are now being taken into custody here in Westwood at the LA Country Club on Wilshire Boulevard. That's the latest overhead. I'm Larry Welk, Sky 5. Back to you.
Dozens of arrests there in Westwood, dozens of arrests in Van Nuys, and now we go back to Hollywood and Lauren Lister, where also dozens of arrests have been made. Let's go to the scene right now as we see here just one of the many people that have been arrested on Sunset Boulevard, making their way into that LA County Sheriff's bus and being brought to jail. Lauren?
Yeah, Cher, we are at Sunset and Gower, where you can see at least a dozen people are being arrested. They are cuffed with zip ties, and they're being loaded onto a Sheriff's Department LA County bus to be booked. They are being arrested, I'm told, by one of the officers on scene for unlawful assembly. We don't know the exact circumstances surrounding their arrest, where they were, what exactly the circumstance was when officers moved in. But what we do know was that earlier this afternoon, there were peaceful protests in this area starting around 4 o'clock at Sunset and Vine. Demonstrators peacefully in the streets for those hours afterwards. And at some point after a 6 o'clock curfew, these people are now being arrested. Now, also after right around that 6 o'clock curfew is when we saw peaceful protests move through this area and criminality at some point moving in, and that is evidenced right around to our right across the street. We're going to flip around and we're going to show the Rite Aid in Gower Gulch. So Gower Gulch badly damaged many of the businesses. So Rite Aid, the glass is shattered. We saw people making off with whatever they could carry, a group of people running in, running out, and there are also smaller stores in this area that were badly damaged, badly vandalized. Kebab Daddy, a restaurant that appeared to be closed at the time, a Starbucks. The stores that were boarded up appeared to have been unscathed. The T-Mobile store that's boarded up and has a security screen down, they look to be okay too, but a lot of damage in this shopping center. Just one example of some of the criminal elements that we see move in at a time where peaceful protests had just preceded that. And then these arrests, it is 6 o'clock, that curfew, we've been talking about it in LA County, was in effect last night. It was issued again tonight by the county. Supervisor Catherine Barger talked about it just a short time earlier today. And now you're seeing presumably demonstrators being arrested. And here are more coming down the street. We're on Sunset and El Centro, and essentially each one being escorted by a member of law enforcement. And we see multiple different agencies out here. We see CHP, we see LAPD, there's a Sheriff's Department bus, and you can also see the people that are being detained, sat down on the curb at this hour. A heavy police presence in this area kind of swept in right around 6. We saw police sweep into the Gower Gulch, kind of shoo the looters away. They all fled. And now you're seeing these arrests being made in the same area, in a heavy LAPD police presence. So we'll continue to monitor this situation. For now, Sharon Michael, we'll send it back to you in the studio.
All right, Lauren, thank you so much. Multi-agency law enforcement effort countywide underway as a curfew is now in effect for LA County until 6 a.m. It began at 6 p.m. and several surrounding cities also under a curfew right now, as we continue to follow the breaking news of so many of these people that are protesters, demonstrators, some of them looters, now under arrest for unlawful assembly. We're going to take a quick break here on KTLA 5 and continue this breaking news after the break. Back in a moment.
Do you know why this is happening? Because the spirits are fighting for George Floyd. next thing they do, guys, ignore him, he'll shut up. Let him talk to himself.
Trouble is well underway.
So, guys, thousands of protesters. You would not believe what happened. I was actually headed home and came right in the middle of thousands of protesters dressed in black, most of them dressed in black, and now police is going nuts out here. I have never seen that many, but these protesters were far more than the previous one, and these guys were all dressed in. Look at all the cops' response here. We are surrounded. We are around. This is police headquarters right here. Police headquarters. And these guys all dressed in black, most of them. Helicopters flying low. And the response is just incredible. The police response. I mean, I was on Hill Street. Hill Street, and suddenly all these protesters started to come. I was like, who are these guys? A whole new set of protesters. Most of them, 99% of them dressed in black, chanting, and I videotaped them. And I knew they were headed to police headquarters. This is police headquarters right over here. And as they say, the stuff is going down.
Welcome back to this breaking news now in Riverside, where you can see from our vantage point in the sky a heavy police presence, as well as protesters, demonstrators that are being corralled in a certain area. It is past curfew now in Riverside County, also past curfew in Los Angeles County. There have been several arrests, dozens of arrests made from Hollywood, downtown Los Angeles, Westwood, and now also in Van Nuys and now in Riverside. We can see this police presence, and it has been a trying night yet again for Southern California. What we haven't seen, thankfully, are fires. The sun is setting in about 30 minutes. That is when we have seen. Oh, actually, I'm going to take that back. It looks like I spoke too soon, and we do have a fire. I was hoping that this wasn't going to happen, but this here now is a live picture from Van Nuys. And this has been the scene for the last several days, where you see looting, destruction of property, vandalism, and then these people that are part of this criminal, part of this demonstration, if you will, then will set these businesses on fire. And it is coming at a time when, as we are in phase 3 of what was supposed to be phase 3 of our reopening of Southern California, of Los Angeles County, and people were supposed to welcome customers back, and restaurants were supposed to have dine-in options with social distancing in place. And so many people have been suffering for the last few months. So many people have been out of work, and we're excited to come this weekend and serve the community once again. Now their businesses have been lit on fire. And now we want to go to this live picture with Larry Welk. We see some rubber bullets being fired. Let's go, Larry Welk. What do you have? Sorry.
Well, we've got.
Sorry, this is Riverside County, and we want to go overhead and talk about what is happening here. Okay, it looks like what we're seeing is a sheriff's Department here in Riverside County Sheriff's moving in, taking some people into custody as we're trying to get a closer picture there in conjunction, it looks like, with another agency, maybe Riverside PD, and we also see some armored trucks behind them as well. Now, this is the scene. You see three or four people line thick of a skirmish line happening here in Riverside County to enforce this curfew. And they mean business, as we've been saying. This is not a joke anymore as we go into this countywide curfew, and curfew also here in Riverside. Protesters are going to be arrested, as you have seen. And they have changed their tactics, law enforcement, and you can see how they have mobilized and that they are out in numbers as we approach 7:30. And as we go from this protest in Riverside and the police presence in Riverside, we want to go back to Larry Welk. He is in Sky 5 now over Hollywood. Larry?
You're looking at Selma and Ivar right now. That's the left side of your screen right now. The right side is what's going on in Riverside, the things you were just describing. But here, this is that area that we were talking about, and this all stemmed from the demonstration that was happening earlier, very peaceful demonstration. It's been all over Hollywood. Then there was the trouble at Gower Gulch, and this group right here splintered off from that group at Gower Gulch. And we can tell you that now LAPD and several other law enforcement agencies have come and boxed these people in. They are now being taken into custody. They are waiting on a bus to come and get these people. But there's still a very large group, several hundred people that we were watching earlier making their way through Hollywood. That is of concern right now. But they can only take so many people in custody at a time. And that is what you're seeing right now in Hollywood at Selma and Ivar. We're also hearing that there might be possible looting going on in the San Fernando Valley. As I look across on Sepulveda, I can see that there is some smoke coming up from the area of roughly Sepulveda and Victory. So we're probably going to go check that out and see what's happening over there. But things really starting to get active here as the sun is going down and as people are not heeding the warnings of the law enforcement agencies. There is a curfew in effect, and they are trying to maintain order so that it doesn't get to be like the nights that we've seen over the past few nights, in particular in Long Beach, downtown LA, Santa Monica. They want to put a stop to that, and what they're doing right now is they are taking people into custody. That's the latest over Hollywood. I'm Larry Welk in Sky 5. Back to you.
All right, Larry Welk, thank you. Micah Ullman back with the coverage here as we look live over Hollywood and a number of people being taken into custody, and the concern growing as night begins to fall with people being out on the street and the potential for trouble. I'm assuming this is again Riverside. Is this Riverside? Okay, it might be in the valley, but either way, this is a live picture and a very dramatic picture indeed of a suspect fleeing from police. It appears there's someone hanging out the back door of that car, and it looks like they're about to foot bail. Hard to say as we come around the bend here and get a visual on that car, but it looks as though someone just ran out of the back of that car. And there you see one individual running. Somebody, now he's tucking that car in behind the bush, hoping that law enforcement doesn't see him. Now, we don't know, Sheriff, this person that they're detaining at this point was in that car, but they're just trying to grab anybody they can in the area and figure out what's what here and determine that's the individual right there that we believe jumped out of the back of that car. Don't know why they were chasing them, but nonetheless, it looks like they've got a beat on him.
Yeah, this is Sherman Way and Coldwater that you're seeing this activity right now, where it looked like police were in pursuit of a white sedan and that there were several passengers inside, and the passengers were had a foot bail, and one of them, if that was a passenger, we're not really sure at this point, came out with his hands up. Again, live pictures over Sherman Way and Coldwater, and several arrests being made. There have been dozens of arrests all over the county, and also in Riverside and Hollywood and Van Nuys and Westwood. We have been seeing people who are not heeding that order of the curfew that began at 6 p.m. They are being taken into custody.
What an impressive response by LAPD. They move in swiftly and in force and in numbers. This is something that the people have been warned about. And, you know, you violate the curfew and you are going to jail. And people are out causing trouble past curfew. And remember, you can be arrested just for being out on the street. I mean, the curfew is the law. You need to be at home and not on the street. And what we're seeing in Hollywood, up close and personal, and in downtown Los Angeles, as we look live, the screen left, is a contingent of police officers that will enforce that curfew and take you into custody.
It is amazing to see the amount of reinforcements that have come in every single area of Los Angeles. It is, as we know, such a vast area to police, and it's amazing that you see so many police in force trying to enforce this curfew, really for the good of the public and the safety of the public. And now we want to go up to Sky 5, where it looks like even more looting is underway at yet another pharmacy. Larry Welk.
That's right. It's a tough situation because we saw a large group of people here as a result of an earlier demonstration, and now people making entrance into the parking lot. But I can tell you they're in for a big surprise. LAPD has about 6 or 7 black and whites that are making their way over to this parking lot. In fact, we see the first couple of LAPD units coming in. I believe, if we can widen out right there, nope, those appear to be maybe private vehicles that are maybe part of the looting here. But the LAPD now making entry into this parking lot, so there's going to be a confrontation of some sort, and that vehicle off to the left is now fleeing the scene. LAPD's got a helicopter overhead. They may try and get some of these people, but people now running out of the parking lot here as they made entry. And this was not an easy task. That pavilion's had, it was boarded up, and there you can see a foot chase going on. LAPD officers now in foot pursuit. First time we've really seen anything like this since some of this has gone on. I'm going to move forward to get you into a better position. But LAPD not messing around. They saw that people were going into the pavilions, put a helicopter overhead, got some air units to track these people, and now in foot pursuit of several suspects here just at Melrose near Vine. Boom, down. So these people right now, if anybody's watching at home, they mean business with this curfew, and they are not going to tolerate any more of the looting. From the time we heard that they were looting and trying to break into this pavilions to now, maybe 5 minutes, maybe, and that's being extremely generous. So this is starting to unfold here in Hollywood. They're starting to take people into custody, and these rapid response teams are acting very, very quickly and taking people into custody. That's the latest over Hollywood. I'm Larry Welk at Sky 5.
What a show of force. Again, the LAPD, and you saw that, a fresh set of legs catching that suspect, and a number of people now in custody as they tried to break into this pharmacy. We want to shift to Riverside County. Riverside Police Department Public Information Officer Ryan Railsback is with us live. Ryan, good of you to be with us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Can you apprise us of the situation in Riverside? What's happening there in terms of police presence and protest?
Well, we still have a very heavy police presence with the Riverside Police Department, also our partners at the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, and then a couple other local agencies. We're looking at maybe a couple hundred or less people still here. We think, for the most part, all the people who came down for a peaceful protest, most of them have left, and we think these are the leftovers are kind of some of the troublemakers that we're dealing with right now. We are starting to arrest a few of them for the curfew violations, and we have given a dispersal order to them, and they're starting to kind of dissipate and cause some vandalism on their way out, but hopefully we'll have it all under control here in a little bit of time.
You can see the force from our vantage point right now, and you're mentioning how you have multiple agencies that are in conjunction with enforcing the curfew tonight. When you tell the people to disperse and that this is unlawful, what is happening? How long do they have before they need to go?
Well, in Riverside County, a curfew was enacted at 6 p.m. It wasn't until close to 7:30 before we started really looking to enforce this and move these folks who are still straggling out of here. We've given them multiple audio or warnings through megaphones, everything. We've put out alerts to their phones, similar to like an Amber Alert, and we've done it on our social media. So we think pretty much most of them know that they're in violation of the curfew right now, and we want them to head home. But like I said, we think we've divided them between the ones who want to cause some problems and the ones who are out here doing a fantastic job earlier with their peaceful protest.
And to be clear, if you're violating the curfew, you can be taken into custody.
Yes, you can. And that's what we're going to do. We have about, I think, half a dozen in custody right now, and we're hoping to get the others out of here. We don't want to have to arrest anybody, but these ones are the ones that are starting to cause some vandalism while they're running away or taking off. So we're going to deal with that. Any type of criminal behavior that they have, we're going to deal with it appropriately.
So what can you tell us about that criminal behavior? Have you seen looting? Can you tell us what stores are damaged?
Well, we have seen some tagging along our library that where the main demonstration occurred. We did have a local, I think it was a CVS market, that we did have a group of people that broke a window. They made it inside. We don't know if they actually looted and took anything because our airship was over it pretty fast, and we had a team of officers get there pretty quick. Most of them, if not all of them, they left right as our officers showed up. So we didn't get anybody in custody, and it looks like we had some broken glass from the store. And we have a team of California Highway Patrol officers that are over there maintaining security until the business can get there to make the repairs.
Officer, we heard from Los Angeles Police Department Chief Michael Moore today, essentially with a plea to protesters to keep an open line of communication with law enforcement and let the police officers know what your plans are if you're the leader of a movement, if you're the leader, an organizer of a protest, so that law enforcement can in essence work together with the protesters who are out there peacefully. Again, we're past curfew, so that no longer applies in this moment.
I want to jump right in,
but
because we are
in general, what's your message to these protesters that are not seeking to be violent and separate them from those who are?
Well, our first message to the large group, we may have had upwards of 4,000 folks out there earlier, was thank you. It was loud, it was effective, it was engaging, and it was peaceful. Until towards the end, when most of them started leaving, similar to like you see at a sporting event, large crowds leaving, and then the ones who want to cause problems kind of singled themselves out. So that's who we're dealing with, is some of those. If we do have any of the peaceful protesters out there, we just want you to go home. The curfew is in effect. We just want you to go home. It's going to be safe for everybody. The other ones, we also want you to go home. But if you're going to stick around and cause some problems, commit some crimes and some vandalism, then unfortunately we're going to have to deal with it. That's probably going to mean a night in jail for you.
But I'm not sure if the store
Give us a list of charges that they could face.
Well, vandalism, depending on the amount of it. You break a window at a large glass window pane at a business, that could be felony vandalism. So you're looking at vandalism. You're looking at the curfew violations. If they kind of decide that they want to commit any act of violence against officers, you're looking at those charges as well.
Wow, look at this.
All right, Ryan Railsback, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on what I know is a very busy night for law enforcement there in Riverside County. Be well.
Trying to gain access into the store.
Right, we want to go back now to Hollywood and go to Lauren Lister. She has been on the ground there by the Gower Gulch, and now she's back in front of the Gower Gulch. Tell us what the situation is currently, Lauren.
Share, Micah, the scene here is what at one point was an area filled with protesters. At another point was an area where looting went on. Well, now it's a heavy police presence in this area, and you see none of that anymore, but you certainly see all the damage. Look at that. The alarm is going off in the store. You can see the shattered glass on the floor. These doors were just shattered. The windows, even the security door, this metal door was just somehow taken down, and we saw a large group go in, come out with what they could. You can see some of the makeup displays are astray or missing. People running out with whatever they grabbed, running into cars on the street right there. This is El Centro. Getting into cars, driving off. This was right about 6 o'clock. Remember that curfew went in right at 6 o'clock. Then police, LAPD, they came flying into this parking lot. At least 8 vehicles I counted. Don't know exactly how many officers they came right as those looters were running out. And you're seeing some of that video from earlier right now. But those people that came in here and looted and vandalized, they did leave behind some pretty devastating damage. So I want to show you this Kickin' Crab, a small Cajun seafood restaurant. You can see a sign on the door that says, due to city curfew, we close at 4 p.m. They closed, they did the right thing, and take a look. Shattered glass. Their door is completely broken. And you can take a look inside. It's just all of the glass. What does this sign say? We will refuse service if you do not wear a mask. When this was hung up, the biggest concern was the COVID-19 pandemic that we are experiencing still now. But just within the last few days, these are the scenes we've been seeing. And we just heard something. It sounded like a firecracker, a firework perhaps. We don't know what it was or where it came from. Take a look. Here's another restaurant next door, a small restaurant. Doesn't appear to be a chain. Also, the door just completely shattered, completely broken. And actually, there are some people here. Weren't you guys saying that you work here? Okay, they don't want to talk. But some of the people that say they work here and we're just pointing, to the businesses where they work that have just been. Look at that. Here's a cash box. Here's a cash box from one of these stores or restaurants. Look at that. There's a credit card. I mean, you can see the vandalism and the theft that just rushed through here, through this shopping center. Take a look. Supercuts, shattered door. T-Mobile next door, you can see where, look, it appears that they tried to tear down the wood plywood to try to get in. Doesn't look like they were successful, but they broke the door. Starbucks down at the end of this shopping center, same thing, so much damage. So just a sample of some of what we're seeing tonight, and we'll send it back to you in the studio.
All right, Lauren, thank you. Our live picture here from Riverside shows law enforcement moving in. You see Riverside police, and you also see sheriff's deputies there working in tandem as they move toward this crowd, and with every intention, as we heard from Ryan Railsback with Riverside PD, of taking these people into custody. As again, it is after curfew there in Riverside County, the 6 o'clock curfew in effect. They gave a cushion of time after that curfew went into effect to allow people who had every intention of getting home to do so. And now here we are an hour 45 minutes later, and it's become clear to law enforcement that those who are still on the street have every intention of violating curfew and causing problems.
Those that are lingering need to go home. They mean business. They will arrest you. They have been arresting people already. We saw some arrests that happened live here from Riverside as protesters or demonstrators approached this skirmish line. And now we see the police force and the sheriffs moving in tandem forward and meaning business. They had some 4,000 demonstrators there today that were peaceful, that we heard from Officer Railsback from the Riverside PD just moments ago on the phone, saying that 4,000 of them were there today, and they demonstrated peacefully. And now that the curfew has gone into effect and it has been in effect since 6 o'clock. It is time to go home. And when we heard the mayor speak earlier, and also Chief Michael Moore from LAPD speak, they reminded people that these curfews are really for everyone to stay indoors, and that it is a step that not anybody wants to take lightly, and that they are there to protect the protesters and to protect families and businesses as well as workers. And so this is in effect not only in Riverside County, neighboring cities, also in LA County and neighboring cities until 6 a.m.
We're going to watch the developments as they unfold in Riverside and throughout Southern California. We're going to take a short break and be back with more breaking news coverage after this.
Almost. They were waiting till they put their helmets to make the call outs. And for all of you watching us online, we're at Eleanor and Gower here in the Hollywood area. This is a traffic stop in progress, and there's the driver there actually. I couldn't see him behind the tree, but we see him now. This vehicle was seen in a few areas where there was some looting taking place, so the LAPD went ahead and pulled the person over. The person pulled over without incident, so this suspect now going into police custody for looting. But now we're going to move over and we're going to try to find that large crowd of protesters that we were monitoring before. I believe they're going to be somewhere to our west, so we're going to go take a quick peek and try to find them. Let's see, where are...
Not even about that anymore. It's more,
What is it about? We continue our breaking news coverage here, and now we go back to Van Nuys and Jennifer McGraw with the scene there tonight. Jennifer?
We're back out here at the Walgreens where they're basically rounding up all those curfew violators, and they have zip-tied them, taken their information, and over there you see the bus. They'll eventually get loaded up on the bus and taken to jail. There's something, also they have to separate the adults from the juveniles, so that's why they probably have two. And if we can spin around this way, this has been our day since we got out here. Police cars left and right. And as we're trying to bring the viewers a little bit about what's going on and try to get to scene, it's hard because we'll go one way with the police and then we'll see another row go the other way. So there's just a whole lot of activity. Here at the Walgreens, though, earlier it was broken into in the front. People ran inside. They grabbed bottles of booze. They tried to grab pharmaceutical drugs, and then they ran out of the store. The problem with all of this, aside from the damage, is that the first responders immediately come to the area and make sure nobody's in the building. And I heard a firefighter actually went inside, and he was cut, like, when he went inside, he was cut by the glass, and it was sort of like he was shredded as he went inside. So he was treated. I hope he's doing okay. But those are some of the consequences that we have when people are being destructive and chaos is going on. And unfortunately, it's the first responders who are also being injured. But at this point, things are happening out here. They're peaceful. We've seen a lot of people just talking to police and they're not causing a lot of chaos. However, in each and every angle around the city, police are going out. Police are enforcing that curfew. They are making those arrests. And I've also heard a lot of people come up to me and say, what are they doing? Again, people probably don't know that there's a curfew, but between the news, the loudspeakers, the alert on their phone, they should definitely know that there is a curfew in place. But unfortunately, so many people are still out and about on the streets milling. There is a fire out by the 405 freeway, so we are going to head out there in just a few minutes.
All right, as we look live on screen left in Van Nuys, and what you're seeing on the right of your screen, well, we saw it for a moment there, the looting of that drugstore there. That happened sometime between 4 and 5 o'clock this afternoon. And again, just a few moments ago, we saw the attempted looting of this pavilions that was also in Van Nuys. We understand a number of arrests are underway here as well. This was a foot chase. We saw police going after one suspect and bringing him into custody. But they're moving very quickly on anyone who thinks they're going to get away with committing crime in the streets of Los Angeles tonight.
We want to go up to Larry Welk. He's in Sky 5 overhead. No? Okay. Well, we are there. That is the chase where you said where you see some arrests being made. And Micah, it has really been one of those days where they mean business tonight. There were 700 arrests that were made yesterday. You can only imagine just how many arrests will be made tonight, but they started early here.
They did, and they're moving quickly in Riverside as well. As we look live on the right of your screen, there's a very heavy law enforcement presence in downtown Riverside. We saw, after talking with Riverside PD a few moments ago, a number of protesters, many hundreds of them that were in the area, and did leave, did adhere to the dispersal order, did adhere to the curfew. As we've been reporting, they gave a little bit of time from the moment that curfew went into effect to allow people to get to their cars and leave. And at this point, here we are going on 2 hours now after the curfew was called in Riverside County at 6 p.m. You see dozens of people still milling about on the street with apparently no intention of adhering to that curfew, and they'll find themselves handcuffed if they don't adhere. And there you see the law enforcement ready to do just that as they move along the surface streets here in downtown Riverside, dealing with a crowd.
We're going to continue to watch what's going on here in Riverside, in Van Nuys, Westwood, downtown Los Angeles, and Hollywood. We are also on our way to a small brush fire on the 405. We will continue our team coverage on this breaking news after the break.
Fired a few rubber bullets, and now they're heading back towards the east. This is going to put them closer to Hayward, and where
store. I'm not sure whether it was a Rite Aid or a CVS.
Running back towards the intersection of Sunset and Laurel. This is the group of protesters that we have really been following now for the last few hours. They started marching from Crescent and Sunset. They eventually ended up in the Hollywood and Highland area before continuing to make their way through the streets of Hollywood. And now I believe technically we would be in the West Hollywood area. And they have been peacefully protesting most of the time. They're really not associated with any looting that has taken place. But oh, there we go. That individual there just went down. It's unclear exactly why. Nobody pushed him. He just kind of fell there in the middle of the street. Again, this is going to be Sunset and Laurel. And as you can see, deputies from the LA County Sheriff's Department moving in.
Yeah, you wonder if they're armed with rubber bullets there. As we continue to watch this, something else that we saw, and we've seen it a couple of times in the past couple of days, that was very unusual. Ileana, I believe you were over that drugstore. I'm not sure whether it was a Rite Aid or a CVS, but there was one broken window there, and there were a couple of protesters, I'd say maybe half a dozen or so, who were trying to keep looters away. As we look at this situation, can you remind us what that looked like?
Yeah, it was actually Gil Levis who was over that earlier, but I was watching his shots, and we know that the people who are out here peacefully protesting want to keep the focus on that. They want to keep the focus on their protest, on calling for justice in the death of George Floyd. So when they saw that people were taking advantage of the fact that they're out here trying to have their voices heard, and then were looting and were disguising themselves as being part of this peaceful group, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. They were asking them to please not loot the area. We also saw something very similar yesterday at the Pike outlets in Long Beach, where the good guys were trying to keep the looters from hurting their overall message. But unfortunately, they can only do so much. They can only hold back the people who are really opportunists, rather, for lack of a better word, who are out here.
Our live coverage continues here on KTLA. Lauren Lister is live on the streets of Hollywood as the LAPD is dealing with a large crowd tonight, well after curfew. Lauren.
Yeah, Micah, well after curfew, and now you're seeing people pay the price for that. We're seeing a number of arrests. So one officer telling me about 35 people here getting arrested. We are we're on Vine off of DeLongpre, and we actually saw one gentleman just try to book it down the street, and police were able to catch up to him, and they arrested him and just put him into a black and white vehicle. All of these folks, I'm told by an officer here, essentially are being arrested for suspicion of violating curfew, and they said that some of them may have been suspected of being involved in looting, some just part of the demonstrations that we've seen throughout the area, throughout Hollywood. We've seen a number of peaceful demonstrations this afternoon, but now that it's gotten after 6 p.m., after this county curfew, we have seen looting, and now we've also seen arrests. And so you can see they have this group of an estimated some 35 lined up now, being detained, zip tie and handcuffs. What's that, sir? One gentleman saying he got pulled out of a vehicle. With no way to authenticate that. So all of these people, what we have seen is them loading people that are being arrested onto buses, and they're being taken to be booked. But this is certainly the direction things are going this evening. We just saw the same type of a scene over at Sunset in Bronson, where a number of people were being arrested there. Again, officers telling me for violating curfew, and at that point it was unlawful assembly. And here, just a few blocks away, a similar scene. So this is a continuation of what we've seen in the last hour or so, following some looting that we saw around 6 o'clock in the Hollywood area. And now we're seeing a heavy police presence in this area, not just here, but also on Sunset near Bronson too. You can see officers appear to be looking for something in the bushes. That's where one of the suspects ran from.
Sheriff's deputies and Riverside PD are getting ready to move in on them. So we'll keep an eye on the situation. We'll get to that. Ileana, this is one area in Hollywood right now, Hayward and Sunset. You've been flying all over this afternoon. Can you give us an idea of where some of the larger groups of protesters are right now, other than this?
This is probably the largest group that we've seen within this last hour, but we did go take a look at that protest group in the Westwood area. That was the group that you saw on the 405 freeway near the Wilshire Boulevard exit. We went to go take a look at those protesters to see where they were, and we actually found a good number of them. I'm going to say at least 24, if not 36 people, very close to, I believe it's going to be Beverly Glen and Wilshire, roughly that area near the golf course. And we saw that they were all being taken into custody by the LAPD. We did not notice any protesters near the Westwood Federal Courthouse. That whole area has cleared. The freeway has cleared. But we did notice that a number of the individuals that had been involved in that protest that eventually ended off on the 405 freeway, a lot of those people are now in police custody.
Eliana, was this group at all part of the other group that was over on Hollywood Boulevard where you showed us? I guess there were 20 people lined up on the curb there next to the Hollywood Stars. Is this group a part of that, or is this totally separate?
I think that at one point, Chuck, they probably were part of the same group, because when we were flying over this crowd earlier, it was a lot larger than what we're seeing here right now. We estimated that it was a crowd of at least 400 people, if not more. And so what we're seeing here is significantly less than that. So at some point, I believe that they did split off, and that group has already been arrested, and not necessarily for looting. They are taking people into custody for looting, but just an overall reason why they're taking people into custody is for violating curfew. So one of the things I heard over the scanner is even if officers suspect that someone may have been looting, they don't really need that as a reason to take them into custody. They're just taking them into custody for breaking curfew. And of course, if they get information or they get surveillance footage that leads them to believe that that person could have possibly also been involved in looting, then they could add that charge later on. But for now, at least tonight, anyone who is out here past curfew will be taken into custody for being outside.
Ileana, we're looking at a split screen right now. What we're seeing, in addition to your live picture from News Chopper 4 Alpha, is the picture that you shot just a few minutes ago. This is that Pavilions. I believe it was on Melrose and Vine. Can you talk us through it a little bit? You know, we're looking at the officers at the front door.
That was fascinating to watch the officers climb through the doors of the pavilions. It's the store that's right at Melrose and Vine, as you said. They had gotten word that there was some looting going on inside. And the reason that the officers had such a tough time getting in the door was that the store, we believe it was the store, put up all sorts of barriers in the front of the door to try to keep people out, to keep people away from looting. That particular pavilions, I believe, has a pharmacy, and of course it has other items that looters would be interested in getting. And so we heard that there was some looting taking place. We went over there, and when we did, they already had about 10 or 12 people in custody sitting down on Vine, but the officers weren't sure if they had gotten everyone. The store is rather large, so what they did was they cleared a path for themselves by taking pallets down and taking other articles out of the way, and then they all started climbing over everything to get into the store. There was easily 20 officers that made their way into the store to check things out and see if anybody else was inside. We haven't heard if they found anybody else in addition to the people that they already had in custody, but they had to double check to be sure.
And Eliana, as we continue also to see on the left side of your screen, the protesters that you're overhead, they're still on Sunset, correct?
Correct. They're still on Sunset. They just passed over Fairfax. The next street coming up, I believe, is going to be Genesee, is what we're hearing. And I'm also listening to something on the scanner. There's a possibility that there could be either a following or pursuit in the area. We have heard about a few followings in the area about regarding possible looters. The officers will begin following those vehicles and eventually get them to pull over. So far, we haven't had a pursuit come out of it all, but they are now coming Sunset Boulevard and Genesee here in the Hollywood area.
Now, as we continue to look at this, we want to remind you there is a curfew. The mayor reminded us of that this afternoon. He said it is from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And simply put, it means you have to stay indoors. Doesn't mean you can drive on the street. Doesn't mean you can walk on the street. It means you have to stay inside. Ileana, these cars, this line of cars right here, would appear to be part of this procession of protesters here.
Some of them are part of the protest. You can look at this vehicle there, for example, the people hanging out the window. A car like this makes it pretty obvious to us, and we know that they're a part of the protest. The other vehicles, though, it's hard to tell. Really, everyone should be indoors by now, so it would lead us to believe that if these vehicles are following some of the protesters, they most likely are somehow involved with the protest and with the cause of having their voices heard this evening. But you can see that there's still quite a few cars out here. I mean, they really shouldn't be out here. It's past 6 o'clock. Again, whether you're in a car or whether you're on foot in the area, if you're out here past 6 o'clock, you could get arrested.
Eliana, do we have any idea where they're headed? I mean, is it possible they could be going back to their parked cars after participating most of the afternoon in this protest?
Are they headed eastbound or westbound? I'm kind of curious as well, Chuck.
Yeah, so they're going eastbound on
East.
Sunset, and I know that they started at Sunset and Crescent. So we're not too far from the area. Ideally, that's what they're doing, is walking back over to Crescent and Sunset where this all began. And I'm continuing to get a little distracted here because we're hearing again on the scanner, it sounds like there may be either a following or a pursuit in the area, and the vehicle may have attempted to run over some officers. So we're keeping an ear on that, and then also continuing to follow the protesters here as they make their way on Sunset coming up to Curson.
Now, we haven't heard any numbers on number of people arrested out there today, but we heard Chief Moore earlier say there'd been as many as 700 arrests, and I'm not sure if that was over the weekend or just yesterday. I think it may have been a culmination of Saturday and Sunday, but 75 people arrested for more serious crimes in LA County. And there you see they're starting to scatter again. Yeah.
Eliana, I'm kind of interested in the pursuit that you're listening to. Is it in this general area?
Yeah, it's in the general area. I'm trying to get the exact cross, and the airship overhead is actually, he's on Crescent is what we're hearing, and Normandy. So we're going to see if we can maybe catch up to that. We can always come back to the protesters here.
Sure.
But we're hearing the airship. He's actually asking what the want is. He's wanted for shooting fireworks at officers as they were passing by. So I'm getting a direction right now. He's on Santa Monica and Vermont. Okay, and now they're calling it a pursuit. So let me punch it into my map here, and we are going to start heading in that direction. We should be there in about 2 minutes. Saro, if you want to head to the directly east.
Chuck, as we're looking at our picture there, that may be the reason we saw those black and whites take off from the location. They took off lights and I assume sirens as well when they left the area and left the protesters.
That could well be. It could well be.
Yeah, it looked like it was something of an emergency situation. And it's the second one. There was another one in Van Nuys this afternoon where the police there, the LAPD, was trying to keep track of a couple of looters. I don't know what the end result was, but it's a dangerous situation, very dicey, even though people are supposed to be off the street. You see more people walking in the street in some areas as part of this peaceful protest.
And we should also remind our viewers online that there is another kind of disturbing situation that's happening out in Riverside, and we've got a was it Alpha or Bravo that's headed out?
I believe Bravo's out there with Gil Levis.
Gil Levis is headed out that way, and as soon as they can establish a signal, we'll bring that to you as well. Eliana has managed to go quite a distance there, and even with the doubler on that lens, it's probably hard to pick out where that pursuit is going. And now we have some video from Riverside. Do I understand that correct?
Yeah, that's what we're seeing, I think, on the split screen there. Yes, Chuck, and there you see the sheriff's deputies. That's some of the video I was watching before I came into the studio here. I believe the sheriff out there, Chad Bianca, is with them. And the one thing that I thought was very interesting, and I watched him take a knee with some of the other sheriff's deputies out there. Obviously, they're meant to signal to the protesters that they're in solidarity with them over the shooting, or not the shooting, I'm sorry, the death of George Floyd, the knee to the neck. You know, unprecedented move. So many police chiefs, so many officers across the country have spoken out against that particular policing tactic. And what we're seeing is the officers trying to let the protesters know they agree with them as long as it's a peaceful protest, but then they see themselves lined up after curfew on opposite sides of the fence here.
Let's see if we can establish contact with Eliana again. Eliana, you got any more information on this pursuit?
Hey, Chuck, yes, we do. Last we heard was Fountain and Hyperion. And so we're probably just about a minute away. So we're just arriving on scene. At this point, we're hearing he's going to be going eastbound. So we're trying to figure out if there's any units behind the vehicle. At this point, I don't think there is. I think it's just the airship. So it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for us to find it, but we, of course, will do our best here. But
and once again, the want was that the individual
had... There's a spotlight about to come up on it, so that'll help us in our search here.
The want was that the individual was firing a fireworks at an officer. Was that it?
Sunset? Yeah, so what we heard was that the person was wanted for shooting fireworks at officers as the vehicle was passing by. And so that is why they got the airship over it, and now they're trying to get units behind it as well. Again, Fountain and Hyperion were the last two cross streets that we heard, but very close to the Echo Park area is where we're at now.
You know, that's one thing we saw this weekend many times in the Melrose area. On Melrose, some of the protesters were shooting across the police lines with fireworks, M80s, things like that. And, you know, as the mayor said today, you know, you might think that is a cute idea, it might be funny at the time, but don't do anything that will mess up the rest of your life. Ileana, is this the car or the vehicle we're looking for?
Yeah, this is the vehicle we were looking for. We didn't have a vehicle description, so it made it a little bit more difficult. And there's no units directly behind it, which is just adds to the difficulty. But thanks to my pilot, Sarah Garabetian, and then we monitored the airship overhead, we were finally able to find it here. It's in the Echo Park area, just off of Sunset and Lilac Terrace. You can see how fast this vehicle is moving, and I'll work to get our speedometer. Pardon me, our speedometer up and running so that we can monitor the speeds of this individual. You see that one unit of the LAPD just starting to arrive on scene there. So I'm monitoring here the streets as we come along, and I'm going to get our map overlay system up and running so we can look at the streets and the speeds together as he comes through the Echo Park area, continuing here on Sunset.
Yeah, that map overlay and the speedometer right there really does help us. He's moving along. If he's on Sunset and he's doing 60 plus miles an hour, he's slowed down just there.
Yeah, and look, there are no police vehicles behind it at this point, but we did see that one unit of the LAPD get very close to it. So we'll see if they manage to get behind it. But currently going here into the Bunker Hill area near Cesar Chavez intersection coming up. Let's see what happens. And this is where Sunset becomes Cesar Chavez. And now we have a unit of the LAPD behind the vehicle. Oh, and now he's getting on the freeway. Sure enough, getting on the freeway here. I'll figure out which direction here in just a moment. But it looks like it's going to be likely, though, the 101 freeway. And there's another unit not even knowing that this is the vehicle that is being pursued. Now the pursuit vehicle is in back of one of the police cruisers here.
Very curious shot there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I believe, yeah, so we, I was going to say, I believe we're going on the 101 freeway here. We're going north-south 101, coming away from Cesar Chavez, coming away from the downtown LA area.
You know, it's very interesting. Is this a caravan of officers headed somewhere else and he just stumbled into this?
It very well could have been a team of officers that was heading up to Hollywood to assist with the arrests that were taking place, and they found themselves in the mix. Because look at that, they're going to continue
looks like it now.
So,
yeah, it does, doesn't it? Now, Eliana,
who would have thought we'd ever see something like that?
Would the other officers know that there was a pursuit going on or not?
They would have known because they can see the night sun of the LAPD airship, and of course they can monitor the scanner, but they were likely asked not to get involved. And so for that reason is why we're only going to have that single unit that was originally behind the vehicle continue to pursue it. And the airship is still overhead. I continue to listen the way he is calling out the streets as the pursuit continues on. But we are just making a turn here onto Temple Street. Temple Street coming away from the 101.
So where are we technically? Downtown area?
We're not. I actually have MacArthur Park right out my window. So we're roughly in the MacArthur Park area on Temple, and I'll get you the next cross here coming up. I'm listening to the airship still. I want to see if he's going to send any more units because at this point we only have that one unit of the LAPD as this person continues to run the red light. He had the red there and he just continued straight through here on Temple Street.
You know, it's interesting when we look at Eliana's shot there, Colleen, just how light the traffic is. I mean, very few. There's a Metro bus, but very few cars.
And I'm wondering, as I look at this, and I pose this to both of you, is there only one black and white basically following this car? Because A, he can maybe get the plates, and B, you know, whoever's in the car threw fireworks at the officers and no one was hurt. I'm assuming that. Otherwise, they would have more people following him.
Yeah, we didn't hear if anyone was hurt when he threw the fireworks in their direction, or what types of fireworks they may have been. Fireworks may have just been the easiest way to describe what this person threw. And so at this point, I widened out just a moment ago as you were speaking, Colleen. I wanted to see if anybody else was behind the car. And at this point, I'm only seeing that one cruiser. And the pursuit, though, continuing on, still relatively fast speeds for surface streets, approximately 60 miles an hour. And I'm going to use my doubler here. I want to see how well we can see inside. I can see the driver, but I can't really see anybody else. All the windows are just so darkly tinted.
Yeah, it would be very fortunate if no one was hurt, but we have had officers hurt over the weekend. One specifically sticks in my mind, and we heard from Chief Moore that one of his young officers was hit in the head with a brick.
Yeah.
It fractured his skull. He was in for surgery. He will recover, but who knows how long that will take.
He said they had to put a steel plate in his head as well, yeah.
And back with you guys here. He's continuing here, Normandy and Beverly, and still fast moving, about 70 miles an hour. My pilot, Sorrow, is confirming with the air show. Oh gosh,
wow.
That was so close.
That was very close.
Wow. My pilot is confirming with the airship. Whenever the pilot gets a moment to speak to the airship, he's trying to confirm that that is in fact the want, which was what we originally heard over the scanner, was that it was for fireworks. But you would think that this is might be considered a little much if it was just fireworks. And as you said, Colleen, if nobody got hurt, considering just how busy all of our resources are here in the city of Los Angeles.
But this has escalated. This has escalated to way more than a prank with fireworks right now. We've seen him almost clip one car. He's gotten on the freeway, gotten off, but he's also crossed over that line. There he is on the wrong side of the road right now.
Yeah, wrong side of the road, and of course also driving recklessly and driving at fast speeds through the streets here in the area, running red lights, running stop signs. So even if the original want wasn't anything that excessive, he's added to that list ever since. He's now on a smaller street called Maplewood, and he's kind of maneuvering through the neighborhood. Perhaps he's trying to find his way back to the freeway, and the nearest freeway would be the 101 building. So he's coming up to the Hollywood area. Now I'm concerned about that because we saw how many people are still out there in the Hollywood area. A lot of pedestrians still protesting in the streets. So that's of concern, because if he gets up to some of those protesters, you don't know if he's going to be able to slow down in time. But currently making his way here northbound into the Hollywood area.
Well, you picked the chase up at Hyperion, around that area, is that correct?
That's correct, Chuck. Around Hyperion, somewhat near Silver Lake, just on the west side of Silver Lake, and then he made his way southbound, and he got onto Sunset. So we followed him on Sunset to where it became Cesar Chavez in the Echo Park area, and that's where he picked up the 101 freeway. He jumped on the 101 north at Cesar Chavez, and then exited the freeway again. I believe it was near Olympic, and has been on surface streets ever since.
So we have no idea where the incident occurred with the fireworks.
We don't. We know it was somewhere in the Hollywood area because the airship that we saw was around that area. And I just lost him behind that building there. He just went to the east on Sunset, so we're going to try to catch up to him there.
There he goes.
And he's making these random U-turns, which is what's making it difficult for us to keep track here. But Sorrow found him out his window just now. And now you saw when he made that U-turn, now he has two units of the LAPD right behind him.
And he's back on Sunset?
Yeah, so this is Sunset in front of the Netflix building. So it's like Sunset and Bronson. We were out here earlier covering the protests, and he's making a southbound turn here. This isn't Bronson, but it's Tamarind. So it's Tamarind. It's just one street to the west of Bronson.
Okay, as he continues along there, if I remember correctly, he can pick up another street that goes parallel to Sunset there. Is it Fountain? Maybe you just crossed over that?
I think it was probably Fountain.
Yeah, and then I believe also Santa Monica is going to come up too. So it's a few majors that are going to come up here, and he's going to have some options. And he can still get on the freeway if he so chooses. He would just have to go left on whatever major he comes up to. So now he's, sure enough, Santa Monica was his choice, but he's going right, which is going to put him away from the freeway.
But he's heading in the direction of the protesters that we were watching earlier. I mean, he's still like 4 miles away from them probably, but...
Yeah, but at the speeds that he's moving at, he could get over there very quickly. And when someone is desperate like this, my concern is that he's just not going to stop.
You know, it's interesting. We're not seeing any pedestrians out there, but we are seeing a lot of cars on the street, even though the curfew is, what, almost 2.5 hours now in effect?
Yeah, so people shouldn't be driving on the roads at this point. If they're in LA County, you sure enough shouldn't be walking on the street at this point because you could get arrested. And so that will at least put less people in the mix if people aren't out and about. But unfortunately, there's still some people who aren't heeding to the curfew. And now he's going to come up to a T Street here. So he's on Gower. Again, this is a street that we were on earlier today when we were covering the protesters. And so now he's on Gower with 2 units of the LAPD behind him, as well as the LAPD airship overhead.
Is he going north or south on Gower?
He's going
Actually,
south
he's
on Gower.
turning.
That's
Doesn't
the
really
old
matter,
Paramount
does it?
Studios there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's by
Paramount.
Paramount.
Yeah, he just made the turn there on Melrose. So Melrose from Gower.
Long time ago, Chuck, I used to work in that area. We called it Gower Gulch.
Yeah.
I remember
True
that
enough.
well.
And the pursuit's going to come right under us, so we'll try to avoid having the camera spin, but sometimes it'll do that. But we'll try to keep track of it here as it comes under us. Again, Melrose and Gower are going to be the majors.
So he's heading back to the freeway.
And Ridgewood. Yeah, so heading back towards the freeway. We'll see if that's what he decides to do, is to get back on the freeway. If he does, are still relatively light. And that would actually help to put, or rather just to diminish the amount of obstacles that will be in his way in terms of pedestrians and then other cars, because again, the freeways are still rather light here through the area.
Eliana, I just have a crazy little question here. Every now and then we see a little light. It almost looks like a laser
I was
light.
ask exactly about that,
and
Chuck.
then it goes away and it's kind of a squiggly line. Is that a reflection, or are they using a laser on him?
I believe
there it
that's
is
going
right there.
to be just, there it is. I think that's a reflection of the light of the night sun on our lens. It happens from time to time. And the airship did actually say that he was having issues with his night sun, which we can tell, which is why it's kind of flickering. And I believe that's why we're seeing that,
back on the
that
freeway,
little light show up every now and then. Yeah, so now it's on the freeway, and he's going to be getting on the 101. I'll give you the direction here in a moment. I believe it's going to be southbound, though. So, yeah, it's going to be southbound 101. And the direction that he's going in now will take him into the downtown LA area.
So basically, he's made a huge circle. I mean, Hyperion's not that far from where he is now.
Yeah, he basically went...
Yeah,
a big loop. He went one way on the 101, and now he's going the other way on the 101. This is right at Vermont. It's where the 101 splits, where you can see that there's a little divider between the freeway between the north and southbound side. But I'm going to widen out the shot now since he's on the freeway.
Looks like the
We're
black
less
and white
likely to
behind
lose
him
him.
is picking up speed as well, trying to close in a little bit.
Yeah, because they could easily lose this guy. He's going so fast. I think he's going at 100. Let me put the camera right on him.
Your speedometer just is fluctuating between 100 and 120 miles an hour. Do we have any idea how many people are in this SUV?
We haven't heard over the scanner how many people the police think are in there, but we've tried to check, and those windows are just so darkly tinted. I can just barely make out a figure in the driver's seat, but we can't see anybody else inside. And at no point during this pursuit have we seen them lower the window or throw anything out or anything of that nature that would help us to determine if people are in certain seats within the car. But wow, look at these speeds, guys. He is really booking and trying to get away from authorities.
And this is the LAPD in pursuit here?
Still the LAPD, but because we're now on the freeway, the CHP could take over. And the reason why that would be best in this situation would be that the CHP is the police of the freeway system. So even though certain units of the CHP would take over here, if he got on other portions of the freeway, different units of the CHP would be able to come in.
Is he getting on the 110 or what is? Yeah.
Yeah, he's going 110 south. So this is going to put him just next to the buildings in downtown LA. It's going to put him just west of all of the big buildings in the heart of Los Angeles. This was a portion of the freeway that was shut down on Friday with all of those protesters. Fortunately, no protesters out here tonight as he continues southbound 110.
You know, it's interesting. Last night we heard from the police chief in Long Beach that so many people were trying to divert attention from the issue at hand that they and an airship over this. It makes you almost wonder that that might not be a concerted effort here as well.
It very well could be, especially if the wah is what we originally heard it was, which was throwing fireworks at the officers. It very well could be a distraction to get some of the attention away from some of the looting that is taking place. But I can guarantee you,
and resources
the LAPD
as well.
Exactly. It takes away 2 ground units, and I'm sure they have plenty of ground units, so maybe those 2 ground units don't play that big of a factor, but it also takes away an airship, and that they don't have as many of. So 1 airship is now completely devoted to this, in addition to the 2 units that are now following this suspect south on the 110.
Boy, I can't believe that SUV can go that fast.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if your speedometer is really working there, Ileana, because he's gone up over 120 miles an hour there.
And I believe it's actually correct. I know it's hard to believe, but I'm also listening on the scanner just to kind of confirm the numbers that we're getting. And we are hearing anywhere from 100 to 120. So that sounds about right.
Oh my gosh.
Incredibly, though. I mean, to be honest, we're having trouble keeping up. That's why we're kind of so far back here. He's heading southbound here on the 110. So this is the Harbor Freeway. He's going to pass right by USC, right by the Coliseum, and really just using any lane that he needs to get by as he continues here southbound 110.
Oh boy, he looks like he almost started to lose control there. So he's already past the 10, correct?
Yeah, so he's already south of the 10 freeway, and so we had to ask for a special permission here from LAX to let us work in their airspace, and so that's why we'll hopefully get a little closer as minutes go on here. But he's going to be just on that other portion of the 10. This is where we've got that express lane that goes above. And he may be temporarily obstructed by it, but hopefully we'll be able to keep tabs on him here. But watch that CHP unit, or rather the LAPD unit. He's really trying to keep up. I mean, we're still looking at, what, 100, 110 miles an hour? And I believe it, because this is fast.
Look at that.
Yeah, you know, it almost looked like he had done some damage, like he might have hit something on the freeway there. But he looks like he's up and running. And tires seem okay.
You know, and to Colleen's point, tossing fireworks at an officer or several officers, man, we're expending a lot of time and resources here on something like that might seem almost kind of petty. But I understand if you're an officer and you have some projectile, you know, thrown at you, it's a big deal. But still, you know.
Yeah, you know, the LAPD, Chuck, you're right, has 13,000 officers, and they're doing shifts of 12 on, 12 off, and they're trying to maximize and get as many people on. But the 1 airship, to take the airship out of the mix here, when they're using those airships to track, you know, large groups of people, to track looters and things like that, you know, that really does take a major resource out of the mix here.
So now he's going parallel to the freeway on surface streets.
Yeah, parallel to the freeway. Yeah, just on the other side of that retaining wall. So now we're going to see him. I was going to say we couldn't see him, but now we can. He's 69th and Flower. So this is going to be the South LA area, and just based off of our previous experience, we know that people tend to return to an area that is familiar to them. So perhaps this is an area that is familiar to this individual. And I could have sworn I saw someone in the back seat. When you made that turn, I thought I saw someone in the passengers, or in the back seat there, in the middle seat. But perhaps it could have been a reflection of the light. But it did appear that there was somebody sitting in the back.
Almost makes you wonder why they don't grab a plate on this guy and then try to track him that way. So they must know something we don't.
If it has a plate.
Well, that's true, too.
If it has a plate, or sometimes it could be a cold-plated vehicle. And we've talked about this before. Cold-plated vehicles are cars that have a license plate on them, but the license plate doesn't correspond to the type of car. So we saw that in a pursuit that we had a few weeks back. Yeah, this one does have a plate, but I'm sure they ran it, and it's unclear at this point if perhaps it came back stolen, or if it does come back to the registered owner. But for whatever reason, this person is still just refusing to stop.
So you're on Florence Avenue, just crossed over Avalon?
Yeah, so Florence coming away from the 110, and those speeds are accurate. These are surface streets, guys, 100 miles an hour. This is just so incredibly dangerous. Oh my gosh. I pray that he doesn't get a red light, because I don't think he's going to stop. This is a very fast here on Florence, 100 miles an hour.
And remember, that is a heavy vehicle, so if it does strike something, it'll make a heck of a mess.
Yeah, what does it look like, Chuck? An Expedition, maybe?
Something like that. You know, I can't tell, but it's a late model. It's not a new one.
He's turning.
He's going so fast that it's hard to even keep up with the addresses and the street signs that you're flashing on the mapping.
Yeah, I mean, I knew he was on Florence, but I missed every cross that he came up to because he was going so fast. He just made a turn there. I believe that's going to be Compton, and he's going southbound. So southbound on Compton, and
is there something coming
up?
up?
Push in here one more time. He's going to make yet another turn there on Compton, and now
that's it.
And now they're running. Okay, so we're going to try to stay with the driver.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.
Wow.
5 people bailed out.
So there was definitely more than one, that's for sure. But we're going to stay with the driver. It's just because he was the person that was driving during the course of this pursuit. So we're going to stay with this guy, and I'm going to go into infrared to be better able to see. Right at our 1 o'clock, Saro, you should see the night sun. He's just on the backside of those trees, so that's where we last saw him. But you guys saw it as we did. Everyone's scattering there, and there's the LAPD pulling up right now, trying to get some officers into place, but that's not even the direction that the driver went in. The driver went this way. They're going to go after some of the passengers. There's an individual there, but I don't believe he was involved in any way. I think he's just a resident, just kind of taking everything all in. But we last saw the driver here on this street. It's going to be, I hope I'm saying that correctly, I think it's Antwerp Street here in South Los Angeles.
This is one of those cases where the suspects outnumbered the police that were following him, because there's only 4 officers, but we counted 5 coming out of the car.
Oh, you just had another squad car just pulled up.
Okay,
it looked
now you
like
got another one.
A couple more.
Yeah,
but nobody seems to be looking in that direction where the driver went.
Exactly. They're saturating the neighborhood, but at this point they're just focusing over in the direction that the passengers ran. But I believe that's going to be a cruiser. Perhaps that's a cruiser there. It's definitely a car that's arriving on scene there. And I see an individual walking away, but he doesn't match the clothing of the person that we saw running away. But again, the last location that we saw that individual would have been that area right there.
I would assume this is going to be pretty time consuming if they ever find the people who are in that car. Do you know if the airship was able to keep up with anyone?
Well,
yeah, so we're hearing that some arrests are taking place, and that's the direction that the passengers ran in, so it appears that at least some of the passengers are being taken into custody.
Yeah, 3 of them went over to the right.
Correct.
One went down the street one way, and the other one went up the street another way, yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like it was... There's another guy right there. So we're hearing that another suspect is right under the night sun. They're in very close to Nadeau and to Antwerp Street. And we're going to continue, of course, to monitor everything that's going on here on the scanner, but we're going to start to make our way back to Hollywood.
Well, that should take you, what, 10 minutes? Maybe not even that.
As the chopper flies, Chuck.
It should take us about 10 minutes to get back to Hollywood, so we're going to go back there. We, of course, don't want to lose focus on the importance of today's protest in that area, so we're going to start making our way back to the north.
Let's remind people what this all started with. This started up in the Hollywood area to begin with. We saw officers scatter with their lights on. It appeared to be an emergency of some sort, or perhaps a call for help. But someone had thrown fireworks. That was the original want on this. Someone had thrown fireworks at police officers or sheriff's deputies or someone there, some sort of law enforcement, and that's why they took off and the chase ensued. Do we have any more information on what's going on in Riverside as well right now?
Jack, where...
Well, we're going to stay with Eliana's pictures as she heads back to Hollywood. It is a gorgeous shot, gorgeous night out there. So online, obviously you're watching us. That's what we're going to do until she gets in position. Probably take her, she estimated, about 10 minutes or so. And Colleen and I will rejoin you live on NBC4 at 11 o'clock for all the news. And we hope to see you then as well.
In front of the White House, demonstrators facing off with police and National Guard members. Then, chaos. Moments later, President Trump addressing the nation.
I am your president of law and order and an ally of all peaceful protesters. I am mobilizing all available federal resources, civilian and military, to stop the rioting and looting, to end the destruction and arson, and to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans, including your Second Amendment rights. Today, I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets.
10-4, Jack. We can do Hollywood for about 20 minutes, and then...
After the president spoke at the White House, police cleared the streets using flashbangs and tear gas. The president then walked across Lafayette Square to St. John's Church, where a fire had been set Sunday night. The president held up a Bible. He then posed for photos with Attorney General Bill Barr and others before returning to the White House. Meantime, Joe Biden is tweeting tonight, quote, "He's using the American military against the American people. He tear-gassed peaceful protesters and fired rubber bullets for a photo. For our children, for our very soul of our country, we must defeat him. But I mean it when I say this, we can only do it together." And late today, we can tell you that the Hennepin County Medical Examiner in Minnesota said that George Floyd's death was in fact a homicide. The report says that Floyd died due to cardiopulmonary arrest while he was being restrained by law enforcement. We'll have more on this later tonight. John Fenolio, KTLA 5 News.
John, thank you. Amid days of protest sparked by George Floyd's death, the Floyd family has called for an independent autopsy to determine how he died.
The results contradicting the county medical examiner's office. Kimberly Chang has the developments, and she joins us live from the newsroom. Kimberly?
Sure, Micah. Yeah, the family called for an independent autopsy, and those results came in as the county medical examiner's final report was released. Meanwhile, Floyd's brother went to the site where he was killed and told the public, of course, he and his family are upset, but they are calling for peace.
If I'm not over here wilding out,
he's right on my side.
If I'm not over here
that's an unmarked unit.
Blowing up stuff, if I'm not over here messing up my community, come on. Then what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? Y'all doing nothing.
George Floyd's younger brother visited his memorial in Minneapolis Monday afternoon. He said, of course, their family is upset, but they're calling for a stop to the destruction in the community.
But we're not going to take it. We're not going to be repetitious. In every case of police brutality, the same thing has been happening. Y'all protest, y'all destroy stuff, and they don't move. You know why they don't move? Because it's not their stuff, it's our stuff. So they want us to destroy our stuff.
Airships on this one too.
They're not gonna move.
Hawthorne. Yeah,
So let's do this another way.
Hawthorne,
Meanwhile, the
PD,
Floyd family
check.
attorney and doctors who performed an independent autopsy announced their results.
Yes, our findings do differ.
110.
Some of the information I read from that complaint state that there was no evidence of traumatic asphyxia.
level.
This is the point in which we do disagree, that there is evidence in this case of mechanical or traumatic asphyxia.
According to the medical examiner, Floyd died from cardiopulmonary arrest, meaning his heart failed, while being restrained by officers. Floyd family attorney Ben Crump.
For George Floyd, the ambulance was his hearse.
Hey, Gil from Alpha on the 450. He's
Beyond
northbound
question,
110.
he would be alive
Right
today
next to
if not for the pressure
white
applied to
truck.
his neck.
They just put a marked unit behind it.
Now, the officer seen kneeling on Floyd's neck was charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. The other officers have not been charged. The family is calling for their arrests. All of them were fired. Reporting live in the newsroom, Kimberly Chang, KTLA 5 News.
Thank you, Kimberly. Back to Sky 5 Live, and yet another police pursuit. LAPD in pursuit on the freeway of this white pickup truck. Larry Welk in Sky 5.
I can't believe it. Another pursuit here in the city of Los Angeles while we're all on quarantine and locked down with a curfew. But nonetheless, there is a pursuit right now that Culver City originated. So the actual pursuing officers are Culver City PD. And hold on one second. Okay. And we're going to stay on the north side for now. And the suspect out of Culver City has now, Culver City requested the help of the California Highway Patrol because the Culver City PD, obviously very familiar with Culver City, but now we're in South Pasadena and there's an accident on the 110 freeway and the suspect may have to stop as a result of the accident. Look at this. There's a fire truck in the middle of the freeway. There's a traffic accident and the suspect had to slow down but did not stop. Culver City still in behind this pickup truck. And again, we're still trying to figure out what he was wanted for. Originally came out, we don't know what the original want was, but somebody said there's a pursuit coming out of Culver City. And I said, it can't be. It must be the pursuit that we just did. And they said, no, sir, it's a different pursuit. So we flew up to the 110, and sure enough, here it is. And the suspect now, I believe he's blacked out. No lights on in that car whatsoever. And for those people that are familiar with the 110 freeway, you know, not only is it one of the oldest freeways in LA and not really built for high speeds, but it ends at Fair Oaks in the city of Pasadena. And so I'm wondering if Pasadena has been notified. I'm looking up ahead into the city of Pasadena, and it's almost like a ghost town. There are hardly any vehicles on the road right now, as it should be due to the curfew. But now moving up the 110 freeway, looks like we're going to be crossing over Arroyo, and then you'll see a curve in the road here, and that will be Fair Oaks as it makes its way northbound on the 110 that will eventually end at the city of Pasadena. So what a night with two different pursuits, so much law enforcement on the road. They don't even want to take the assets away from some of the areas where there might be protests or where there might be people that are violating the curfew. So it's very unusual that they would be doing this right now. Nonetheless, they must have decided that this was somebody that they wanted to get off the streets of Los Angeles, Culver City, now Pasadena. And there you see, looks like some sort of a GMC pickup truck moving at an incredibly high rate of speed right now, and now getting into the city of Pasadena.
All right. Again, this is a second pursuit now that we are over in Sky 5 of a white pickup truck. The other one was a white SUV. We're still trying to figure out what the want is for, but obviously it's enough for this driver in this pickup truck to want to run, and he's now made it into the surface streets of Pasadena. Again, that 110, it ends at Fair Oaks, and so now he's making his way through surface streets in Pasadena, and he got a green light there at that intersection. And because there is a curfew in effect, he's on Arroyo, sorry.
Red light.
Here we go. We'll go up to Larry Welk right now as he's following this, but he's...
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm talking to Colton Von Pertz in the back seat, doing an excellent job tracking these incredibly high-speed pursuits, but I was wrong. It wasn't Fair Oaks. Red light right through. Doesn't even slow down. Just blazed right through that red light. 70 miles an hour on surface streets. Got a fresh green light, and now completely blacked out. Nobody else on the roadway right now going up Arroyo. Now, I can tell you Arroyo dead ends into a bus station, but it looks like instead Arroyo, he's going to get on Green Street. It's a one-way street. He went the right way, thank goodness, and now making his way into Pasadena on Green Street. Green Street will have a little jog to it when it gets up to Lake, but for the most part, it looks like Culver City's getting into position to try and do a pit. So that would be extraordinary if they were trying to pit at these speeds with a pickup truck. But the suspect now moving along Green Street and going very, very quickly. Green Street is completely covered by trees as well in some places, so it might be difficult to get a shot of the suspect. We're going to move Sky 5 into a position where you can see through those trees. But do you notice that there's nobody else on the road? It's a burglary suspect, so thank you to our assignment desk. They just confirmed what the want was. So that's 2 pursuits. Whoa, cross traffic. One of the only other cars on the road tonight. But the suspect wanted for burglary, now on green. And there is a canopy of trees, hard on the brakes at a green light, so we expect a turn coming up. Left turn on Catalina. Now northbound Catalina slowing down a lot, turning into a parking lot. Looks like it's going to come to an end right here. Suspect stops, gets out. That's a good job, Colton. Arms in the air. Unbelievable. Why drive all the way up here just to do that? But the suspect made a pretty smart choice there. And the suspect got, okay, now we believe the passengers are on the left side of your screen. Passenger now making a left turn, and passenger in custody now, arms out, flat on the ground. So just speculating here, the car stopped, the driver got out, arms in the air, so perhaps the driver wasn't even involved with any kind of crime. So the suspect clearly was in the passenger side and got out and was running away from officers, now in the custody of the Culver City PD.
They're chasing somebody else.
Very empty Pasadena.
They're chasing somebody else. I can't quite make out what that is, but clearly there's urgency there when we believe that the suspect was in custody. And whether somebody else jumped out and ran, we don't know at this point. But their pursuit does not appear to be over of everyone involved here. Again, Larry, you indicated a burglary suspect. There you see the driver down on the ground next to the driver's side door. Suspect number 2 in custody in that parking lot that we just saw. But then the officers running back in the other direction.
Number 3.
Yeah, there we have number 3 passenger coming out there with the hands up and listening and abiding by what the officers are telling that person to do. It looks like it might be a woman, and I think that the person in the parking lot that was put into custody, that was running away, that is in custody now, also a woman. But here we have an incredible police response as she's getting cuffed, or he, an incredible police response as all of LA County is under a tactical alert. Everybody's on duty tonight.
A wild night across Southern California.
You know, of course, a burglary suspect, we're all supposed to be under curfew, and if they catch somebody trying to get into somebody else's home, or any kind of burglary at all, there's so much law enforcement right now that it's just a bad move all around, because there is law enforcement everywhere. In fact, there are helicopters right now. There's National Guard, there's local police departments, CHP, LAPD, Pasadena. It's just incredible how much there's a blanket of law enforcement right now covering Southern California. And now you can see the suspect being taken into custody. That was the driver right there. And they are going to clear the vehicle. And that's it for this one. Another pursuit tonight ends without anybody getting injured and no traffic accidents. Thank goodness for the light traffic here as a result of this curfew.
Boy, a wild night across Southern California in ways we have not seen. Multifaceted response tactics for officers dealing with crowds, dealing with protesters, dealing with curfew breakers, and dealing with suspects who are running from the law after assault with a deadly weapon, burglary, you name it. And the list of incidents grows longer as the night grows longer.
Hundreds of people, well, dozens and dozens of people arrested already just for violating curfew. And within the last hour, just two pursuits within the last hour that we were able to follow, both burglary suspects and one, as you mentioned, assault with a deadly weapon. So we have all three of the suspects here that were evading police in custody. An incredible police response. It was Culver City, the Culver City PD that was in pursuit of these burglary suspects all the way into Pasadena. And here we go. This is at least the end of the pursuit and suspects in custody.
We will exhale and take a short break and be back with more breaking news coverage after this.
Now they'll make their arrest on the driver, and that'll do it for this chase.
We need to look at that and
Unknown
determine
if
whether that's appropriate
the third
or not.
person that we saw, the first one out of the car
that need to be taken
that ran
and we need
into
to
the parking lot is in custody or not, but this driver is in custody. One other passenger and a bunch of officers that took off after the passenger.
That's a different approach than what we've seen in the past.
And if I might.
Okay, we're done. This is Catalina Avenue and East Colorado Boulevard.
Sale of
we're done.
High-level military equipment as though we are about to go into a war zone situation because it's been surplus military equipment. We need to look at that and determine whether that's appropriate or not. There are other approaches that need to be taken, and we need to reevaluate just what we're doing and how we are approaching the citizens, the fellow citizens in the community. That's a different approach than what we've seen in the past.
And if I might add, I mean, I think there is not one area of the criminal justice system that does not need to be analyzed for racial disparate outcomes and fixed. One great example is DPSST, the Department of Public Safety Standards and Practices. When I read about the former Portland police officer who was in the gang enforcement unit, then went to work for West Lynn, and then got fired because of his racially inappropriate behavior, and then I find out that he became the #2 person at the training facility that trains law enforcement all over the state of Oregon. I think we all have an obligation wherever we are. Me at the city level, I'm thrilled we have a new Multnomah County DA coming in, Mike Smith, who is absolutely reform-minded already. I think it's important that the legislature look at up and down and see what they can find. The governor looks up and down and sees what they can find. But there's not one easy fix that's going to make our justice system fair. But we have an obligation and a responsibility to look up and down wherever we sit in the spectrum and make sure that we are looking at it through a racial justice lens. And if it comes out that it is not a racially just outcomes, then we need to tear it apart and start over.
And Commissioner Hardesty is exactly right. There's not one silver bullet. It's going to take a lot of buckshot. And it is both regulatory changes in our system. It is changing statutes, changing the law. It is changing systems and changing culture. And, of course, funding changes. And I'm confident that all of us working together can ensure that we have an Oregon that is better for everyone.
Thanks, Claire. Next up, we have John McCarthy from KEZI Eugene. Go ahead, John.
This question is for Governor Brown, and it's Connor McCarthy from KEZI 9 News. I just had a quick question about just your response and your support to the Eugene community and the metro area down in the South Willamette Valley, because we did have protests and violent riots Friday night. I was just wondering if you had any conversations with the community leaders down in the metro area, and if so, how are you supporting them in keeping our community safe?
Great question. Did have a conversation with Mayor Lucy Vinnis sometime this weekend. I don't remember the time. And spoke with Senator Manning earlier today. And that is one of the reasons why I've made the decision I made regarding the National Guard, is that I wanted to make sure that we had adequate capacity of our Oregon State Police to protect Oregonians around the entire state.
Okay, and are any of those resources going to help out the Eugene community, like EPD or state police in the metro area?
I'll let Superintendent Hampton respond to that.
Hi, Travis Hampton with OSB, and I'll also give you the real-world example from last night. We had
in
demonstration
2012,
events
17-year-old
occurring in Klamath Falls, Eugene, obviously the city of Portland, and Salem, our own state capital. So the respective police leaders from those entities, those venues, were communicating via video teleconference every other hour, every odd hour, up until 1 o'clock this morning. We are shifting resources by the hour. OSP resources statewide, we're on 24-hour emergency operations shift. That means wherever the respective police chief or the governor directs those resources, every trooper within 100 miles that is on duty would respond to that location. So our OSP resources are in that mode this evening. We'll respond anywhere in the state by the governor directing National Guard personnel to the city of Portland. That will free up 50 state troopers to respond to Lane County, to Klamath County, to the heart and lungs of the Oregon State Police operation, our state capital, which has seen a need for additional personnel the last 3 nights.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks, Connor. Next up, we have Alex Zielinski with the Portland Mercury. Go ahead, Alex.
Hi, several of you mentioned white supremacists taking advantage of these demonstrations. Someone mentioned Proud Boys. I'm curious if you have specific evidence or proof that there are white supremacy groups that are specifically infiltrating these protests, and what that looks like.
Yes. In fact, we've seen pictures of some of the Proud Boys that are regular visitors to our great city, actually down at protests over the last 3 days. There's been a lot of pictures posted of Proud Boys and white supremacists on Facebook and in other locales. I can tell you in my conversations and briefings with the police chief, they have acknowledged that there are agitators who are there solely for the purpose of creating chaos. And so there's no question, not just here in Oregon, but all over the nation. And I can't prove that it is an attempt to disrupt our election cycle, but I do think it is a nationally orchestrated effort to interrupt our November elections.
If you may.
Senator Frederick.
I have I had until about a couple of months ago tried to attend to as many of the demonstrations downtown as I possibly could. I would sit off to the side and watch and observe who was there and who was not. It was not in an official capacity, but it was something that I thought I could do relatively easily. And what I found over the time was watching some of the folks who were classified themselves as Proud Boys or whatever, disguising themselves and go into a corner, into a side, disguise themselves and put on black hoods and whatever and black things, and then walk into the crowd and try to create problems, try to throw things from the back of the crowd towards the police, try to do all sorts of things, and then go back and join the Proud Boys again as part of their effort. These are the kinds of things that I saw while I was out on the street. Now, I probably would not have gotten a chance to see that as a reporter, because as a reporter, I would have been paying attention to a lot of other different things. But as just an observer, as watching from the side, I saw things taking place that were clearly this group trying to set up agents provocateurs. And I remember a fellow who decided that he was going to try to get us to use C4 in peace demonstrations in the 60s. We decided to let him know that we were not going to do that. So it is an old story. It's an old approach. It is a tactical approach, and we know that that's what's going on. The question is what we can do about it and how we disrupt the disruptors.
Thanks, Alex. The next question is from Monica Semiola with OPB. Go ahead, Monica.
Hi, this is for Governor Brown. What are your thoughts on the mass gatherings around the state amid the coronavirus in Multnomah County, especially in Black and Brown communities who are on the front lines of the protest? And if so, would that delay the county's June 12th phase 1 reopening?
Thank you for the question, Monica. Yes, I'm certainly concerned about people's safety during protests. I am absolutely committed to making sure that Oregonians and, frankly, Americans have the ability to use their voices to improve our democracy, to eradicate racial discrimination in our criminal justice system, in our education system, in our economy, and in our healthcare system. But I want to encourage protesters to stay safe. And that means continuing to wear your face coverings if you feel that you need to be out on the streets, to maintain social distancing 6 feet apart to the extent possible, and obviously to continue to use hand sand and wash your hands. The safest option is probably the one that Commissioner Hardesty mentioned, and that is stay home, spend some more time with your families.
Thank you.
Our next question is from, we've got time for probably just 2 more questions. Next question is from Jonathan Bach with the Portland Business Journal.
Hi, Governor. This is Jonathan with the PBJ. I was just reading over a story of one of my colleagues, Matt Kish, and he wrote about how there's a lack of diversity on the Oregon Council of Economic Advisors. I also tuned into the meeting on Friday, and as Matt points out here, it's mostly made up of white men. What are you doing to diversify that panel of economic advisors who are giving you advice at this critical time in Oregon's economic history?
Thank you for that question. The council participated in a listening, I think a discussion session with the legislature last week. I think that was the first time that had happened, and it became very clear. And we are working to change who is on the Governor's Council of Economic Advisors. When I started, I don't believe there were any women. There are now a few women. And with the help of some of my colleagues in the Oregon legislature, I'm confident that we can have a council that reflects the diversity of our communities very quickly, and we're going to make that happen. It's my expectation that we stop talking and start taking action. That means continuing to do the work around changing our boards and commissions. That means making sure that our state government reflects the many faces of Oregon, that our agency directors look like the diverse communities of Oregon, that our statutes in this state work to eradicate racial, ethnic, gender, and sexual orientation discrimination. Now is the time to do this work. I think we can all take collective action and truly make a difference.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So my question is for Governor Brown and Commissioner Hardesty. Do you think that the additional state troopers may provoke some of the protesters and demonstrators? And a question for state troopers is what experience and training
in every case of police brutality, the same thing has been happening. Y'all protest, y'all destroy stuff, and they don't move. You know why they don't move? Because it's not their stuff, it's our stuff. So they want us to destroy our stuff. Come on, Doc. They're not going to move. So let's do this another way.
Meanwhile, the Floyd family attorney and doctors who performed an independent autopsy announced their results.
Yes, our findings do differ. Some of the information I read from that complaint state that there was no evidence of traumatic asphyxia. This is the point in which we do disagree, that there is evidence in this case of mechanical or traumatic asphyxia.
According to the medical examiner, Floyd died from cardiopulmonary arrest, meaning his heart failed, while being restrained by officers. Floyd family attorney Ben Crump.
For George Floyd, the ambulance was his hearse. Beyond question, he would be alive today if not for the pressure applied to his neck.
Now, the officer seen kneeling on Floyd's neck was charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. The other officers have not been charged. The family is calling for their arrests. All of them were fired. Reporting live in the newsroom, Kimberly Chang, KTLA 5 News.
Thank you, Kimberly. Back to Sky 5 Live, and yet another police pursuit. LAPD in pursuit on the freeway of this white pickup truck. Larry Welk in Sky 5.
I can't believe it. Another pursuit here in the city of Los Angeles while we're all on quarantine. And
Trump now lashing out at governors in a conference call over their handling of the protests across America, calling many weak and urging them to be tough and dominant.
But we have 350,000 plus in the National Guard and nobody wants to use them. And their cities are ransacked and they're a disgrace all over the world.
The White House is now saying where governors have failed, the president is stepping in.
Violence, looting, anarchy, lawlessness are not to be tolerated. Plain and simple. These criminal acts are not protest. They are not statements. These are crimes that harm innocent American citizens.
And that was Daryl Forges reporting for us.
And back to Kimberly Chang, who is in the newsroom tonight as we learn new details on the autopsy of George Floyd, and of course an independent autopsy that was conducted by a medical examiner hired by defense attorneys representing Floyd's family. Kimberly has more. Kim.
Micah, share. Yeah, the doctors along with the Floyd family attorney released the autopsy results today. Meanwhile, the Floyd family, also his brother, gathered at the site where Floyd was killed and called for peace among protesters. Take a listen. Oh, and we are waiting to get that information in right now. But at this point, we're waiting to get that package in for you right now. So the Floyd's brother was at the site where he was killed, and he gave a very powerful speech to people who were there. He said that the family is God-fearing, they're a peaceful family, and he is calling for everyone to remain peaceful during this time. He said, of course, he and his family are upset, but at this point, they don't want to see destruction in their community. So he's telling everyone to be peaceful. Meanwhile, the autopsy report that you mentioned, both were released today, the independent autopsy as well as a medical examiner's report, and we do have that story in for you now.
If I'm not over here wilding out, if I'm not over here blowing up stuff, if I'm not over here messing up my community, then what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? Y'all doing nothing.
George Floyd's younger brother visited his memorial in Minneapolis Monday afternoon. He said, of course, their family is upset, but they're calling for a stop to the destruction in the community.
But we're not going to take it. We're not going to be repetitious. In every case of police brutality, the same thing has been happening. Y'all protest, y'all destroy stuff, and they don't move. You know why they don't move? Because it's not their stuff, it's our stuff. So they want us to destroy our stuff. Come on, Doc. They're not going to move. So let's do this another way.
Meanwhile, the Floyd family attorney and doctors who performed an independent autopsy announced their results.
Yes, our findings do differ. Some of the information I read from that complaint state that there was no evidence of traumatic asphyxia. This is the point in which we do disagree, that there is evidence in this case of mechanical or traumatic asphyxia.
According to the medical examiner, Floyd died from cardiopulmonary arrest, meaning his heart failed while being restrained by officers. Floyd family attorney Ben Crump.
For George Floyd, the ambulance was his hearse. Beyond question, he would be alive today if not for the pressure applied to his neck.
The officer seen kneeling on Floyd's neck was charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. The other officers have not been charged, and the family is calling for their arrest. All of them were fired. Reporting live in the newsroom, Kimberly Chang, KTLA 5 News.
All right, Kimberly, we want to now go to Sky 5 in Hollywood over the scene of, looks like yet another arrest. Larry
That's
Welk
right.
in Sky 5.
You can see that suspect being taken into custody, handcuffed, being put into the back of the LAPD's black and white. I can tell you that they believe that this armed suspect was wanted and because he possibly brandished a weapon, and at one point they believe he may have even been part of the demonstration that was walking through Hollywood earlier this evening right around 8 o'clock. So they set up a quick perimeter. They had an air unit almost immediately. They identified the suspect, and just within a matter of moments, they had officers from the LA County Sheriff's Department and the LAPD, and they were able to take that suspect into custody. So right now, one in custody, believed to be an armed suspect. Once again, I've been saying it all night, there is a curfew in effect, and there are police officers everywhere. So you got to be off the streets and stay home right now, because if you're a suspect, you're going to be descended upon with a lot of officers here in the Hollywood area in particular. So just a very interesting night here in Hollywood in Southern California. That's the latest over Hollywood. I'm Larry Welk in Sky 5. Back to you.
Larry, the impression we're getting here is that the crowds are beginning to thin in Hollywood, perhaps by way of arrest, perhaps by way of disbursement, or a combination thereof. But it appears now in the 9 o'clock hour that things are a bit more settled than they were 2 hours ago?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, the big crowds are off the streets here in Hollywood. In fact, there's very little in the way of traffic, and we certainly don't see any of the crowds that we saw earlier. But I can tell you with great confidence that the only areas of congestion are those of police officers, highway patrolmen, sheriff's deputies, and in some cases we've seen the National Guard vehicles moving around through Hollywood as well. But not a lot of foot traffic. We did see, we just flew over a shoe store that we were trying to find earlier, and it looked like somebody had tried to breach the door, and possibly it was employees there standing out front talking to a couple of police officers, not letting anybody into that shoe store. So not very much foot traffic, but a lot of police officers here in Hollywood.
All right, Larry Welk in Sky 5 for us, live over the scene there of yet another arrest in Hollywood. We're going to take a quick break here on KTLA 5 and back with more breaking news in a moment.